Good to go.
Okay. Let's give it another minute to see if, well, actually, Sonia's going to be late if she does make it. So let me just give a minute for Alfredo. Do we have any applicants waiting? Are
Yes.
they here?
Our first
Okay.
interview doesn't start until 5:45. So
Right. Okay. So we got a minute. Okay, so I'll just do the intros and add people as they come. Welcome to the what's today? Thursday, December 10th meeting of the Albany Common Council's Public Safety Committee. We're meeting to review applications for applicants to the Violence Prevention Task Force. For the record, myself, Kelly Kimbrough, chairs here. Council members Hoey and Igo, who are Public Safety Committee members, along with our staff, Michelle Andre, our legislative aide, and our attorney, John Rafael Pichardo. And as members come, we'll just add them. And again, we're looking to add members to this Violence Prevention Task Force.
Kelly, I'm going to use the same question I used yesterday. I think it's only fair, so if that's okay.
Yeah, I think if we just kind of flow and do the same thing we did yesterday, I think that would be good. And I mean, we have some different folks here. If different questions come up, that's fine. Also, but I think we should try to stay somewhat in line with what we were doing yesterday, to be fair. And we got again, looking at some of the resumes, it looks like a good group of folks from different backgrounds, which is just what we need. So that'll be good. And so, Michelle, this is we take out Dr. Rigberg, and so what do we move everyone up, or are we just going to have that time in between Mr. Pratt and Mr. Walston?
we're just gonna have that time. Usually
Okay.
we go to overtime anyways. So I think it's fine to
It should be fine. Yeah, we'll use it up. So okay.
Kelly, what was Sonia's first question? If she's not going to be here, it was always a good lead-in.
Oh,
Yeah, exactly.
right. Yeah, I didn't even. Let me think about that.
All right. You can take the lead-in if you think of it.
Yeah,
Combine the two.
it was something along the lines of
Wasn't it something to, what do you bring to the committee? I'm pretty sure that was hers. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No. That's, we're brainstorming here. It was in that vein, but I think it was also what would you change?
She added on to it.
Or something like that. So yeah, we'll work it out. So
Go back to our old recording.
right, yeah. I can't
So our first one is going to be Joseph Mancini.
mhm.
This is
Looks like appears we've been joined by Chief Auditor of the city, Dr. Dorsey Clears. Good evening, Dr. Clears.
Good evening, everyone.
Now, Kelly, our first person lives in Schenectady, but he does have some background in working with youth. Are we reaching out to, well, keep that in mind after we go through our picks, but
Yeah, we can do that. Well, certainly as the director of the facility out there, the juvenile secure
yeah,
detention, he's got,
where is the facility? I'm just looking. Oh,
it's right
Capital
next to the jail.
District.
It's
Yeah, right,
right
okay.
next to-
Oh,
so he
get
certainly-
some insight.
Yeah, yeah. And I was always a fan of, I mean, even if you didn't live in a city, if you spend the better part of your work life here and you're involved and engaged, it makes
Yeah,
sense to
yeah.
include you in these conversations. We are also joined by committee member Alfredo Ballerin, council member Ballerin. Good evening.
Good evening, everybody. Sorry I'm running a little late.
No problem. Yeah. Okay, so you said he's already with us? Our first guy? Our
Yes,
first,
but do you want to start by asking some of the questions you had about the equity agenda, some of the confusion to,
oh, yeah, Dr. Please.
Clears?
Sure.
because these meetings might run a little long tonight, so.
Right, and so we had a question about the number of public safety members. Some of this stuff, JR was kind enough to reach out to Dr. Pleers for us earlier to get some clarity. Are you there with us, Dr. Pleers?
I'm sorry, President Pro Temp, I missed your question.
Yeah, no, I was just checking to see if you were there. The question, no, we yesterday we were kicking around questions and trying to narrow down, intentions and what goes where. Like we had the question about number of intended public safety committee members to be that would be a part of the group. So that was one of the issues, or it wasn't an issue. It was just a question. The thing is, we're trying to define this as we go along, and we're just trying to get some input from you as the creator of this, to try to stay true to your ideas about how this would go.
Appreciate that. And so it was my understanding that there was, one of the questions was about, for example, members of the Public Safety Committee. And does that mean all of the members, some of the members? And my intent when including that in the legislation was that there should be some representation from the Public Safety Committee, not necessarily the entire Public Safety Committee, because I do think that there should be a nice balance between government and community members in a way that the group doesn't become so large that it's not productive. And so if I had, since there generally are 5 members, I would say no more than 2. So between 2 and 3 members, ideally 2 from the public safety committee. And as a result, there's representation, and those individuals can then convey information back to the larger public safety committee.
Yes, thank you. And that makes pretty good sense. And again, the 2 as a regular part of the body would be fine. And of course, with the understanding that any other members can jump in the meeting when they, when they see fit or want to participate, but not be a member of the group. So thank you for that. Number of members, we were going back and forth. We wanted it to be odd. We want more community folks than government folks, like you just mentioned. So I think yesterday at last conversation, I want to say we're around 17. Is that where we, but that's including everyone, including the folks spelled out in the legislation and any folks that we would add. Is that where we landed? Would you agree, JR?
Yeah, that's where I recall from yesterday, and keeping it an odd number as my recommendation, so that way there's no tie in the event when it comes to voting for funding and the programs.
Okay. And Dr. Pleers, we're also talking about the around the information in there about having membership from the wards disproportionately impacted by violence, and again, we had some discussion around that and back and forth. But I mean, there are the traditional wards that we have issues with, and then of course this year we're kind of in the twilight zone with the violence and all the crime, so it's impacting everywhere. But your intent was tradition, like the lower wards, first through 5th, and with the 8th and the 11th being in there. Not the 8th, the 11th and the 10th being in there on occasion based on the activity. Is that?
Yeah, and I was intentional about not specifying specific wards so that the data could drive the decision. I know that historically those wards, the lower wards, tend to have disproportionate cases of violence. Hence, when you look at how the police are deployed across the city, there's disproportionate representation in specific wards because of incidents of violence. So that the thought was to allow the data to drive that conversation. And I know how council members get sensitive about maybe feeling left out their wards. And so, the purpose was to ensure that those council members whose wards see the uptick in violence, their voices are there so that they can bring their community's voices to the conversation. So it's not intended to be exclusive. It's just given the nature of the patterns of violence that we see, and it's not ideal to have the full council be a part on the body. The point was to make sure that for those communities that have these disproportionate cases of violence, they have representation on this body. And so as a result, it makes sense that their council members would be the ones representing their voice.
Okay. So thank you for that. And just so you know, your comments there kind of it's basically what we came up with through our conversation. Where it's spot on with what you said. Mr. Hoey?
Yeah, Dr. Pliers, nice to see you tonight. One of the things that came up, and you pretty much you didn't hit on it, but it falls in the same way, is that wards can change at every census. So we don't know what's going to be Ward 1, 2, 3, through the whole city. Neighborhoods are going to change a bit. So it's a good idea that it's flexible. And like you said, based on the statistics, how we move things around. So I just wanted to add that just to let you know. Thank you.
Thank you, and good to see you as well.
Okay, and so
Tom, and census, we won't be doing redistricting for probably at least 2 years. So, and this is to start off, it's a 2-year committee. So I don't think that part matters that much.
I thought this committee's going on forever.
Well, I thought someone said the other night it was for 2 years. It probably
no,
should.
no,
but I
no,
don't know.
it's it'll turn no, it's going to turn over in 2 years. That's the intended. No, someone actually said that, but then I corrected and said the intention is for it to continue.
When you said turnover, does that mean all new?
It
Meaning a
says
new-
2-year terms.
2-year terms.
Okay, all right.
And then so yeah. And so with that, we Dr. Pliers, if you have anything else to impart, please feel free to do so now. And otherwise, we're going to move on to the applicants.
Yes. So clarifying question, you all talked about 17 members. Was that 17 including all of the members of the Public Safety Committee? So if so, would that then change that number?
And actually, when we came to that number, I think we were in a place where we were
Yes.
talking about all the public safety members. So yeah, it would reduce the number because we're gonna reduce it to 2 or 3. 2. Is everyone okay with 2?
No.
2 no. Go ahead, Tom.
No, this was, this ordinance passed through the whole council, and you're changing, and with all due respect, saying my intent was this, but the language says that. We really need to fix the language, and I'll go along with voting to change it. With the whole council should really decide it.
And thanks, Tom. And whatever the council wants to do with that, it's you all's prerogative to do. And that language, because it's ambiguous, and I can admit that, it leaves it open to interpretation. And so in my conversation with JR, he read it as members being all members. How I wrote it and its intention was members being, it needed to just be some representation. So members of the Public Safety Committee needed to be present on this body. So it's how it's interpreted, but that's a decision that the council needs to make. I'm not trying to impose. I'm just clarifying when I wrote it and when I specified members, it was just making sure because there are some bodies in which there are no council representation on them. And in this case, I thought it was very important, not just that the council members disproportionate in those wards that we just spoke about, but because of the unique position that public safety members tend to be in when we have upticks in violence, that there should also be some representation from public safety.
Last night I had mentioned that maybe we could do like ex officio for the public safety committee members, where they don't have voting rights, but they're ex officio on the committee. That it was just an idea. Thank you, though.
Thank you. And Kelly, so that was all I had. The only point that I'll make is I really appreciate the fact that the council is taking the legislation very serious and working through it. By no means is it a perfect piece of legislation. It's a living, breathing document. It's legislation, so it can be amended. And I'm not here to say that it's my way or the highway. I knew going into this that it would need, um, down the line, there could be some amendments from council members. And so it's the will of the council at this point. I'm available at any point if you have questions about what my initial intent was, and I'm happy to share that. So I'm available as a resource for that.
Darcy?
Yes, Joe?
Thank you.
What came up was last night that I said I felt a little out of place, okay? And I think the 8th and the 15th work because basically lately, with everything that's going on, we have 0 crime. And I don't want someone saying, well, here's people uptown saying what the problem is, you know, where all the crime is. It just feels a little awkward. So that's why the question came up last night, I believe, about how many members of the Public Safety Committee. So.
Yeah, Joe. And I think that I've been a part of some of those very sensitive conversations where people have said things like that. You know, well, what do they know about the issue? They don't live here. And so I think that's a very valid concern to have, because every time that we have some of these incidents crop up, there is a few voices, and sometimes it's not just a few, who feel that those closest to the pain and the problem need to be the ones leading the discussion, because they are living and breathing the issue and the problems. So I understand that wholeheartedly.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, thank you very much.
Okay, well, I have a collaborative meeting
Yep.
going on at the same time. So I'll let Kelly, I'll let them know that this is where you are. So
Are they
they're
looking
not
for me?
looking for you.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
They were
Thank
looking
you.
for you earlier. So I'll let them know that you're facilitating the public safety meeting.
Thank you.
Okay, have a good
Okay.
night, everyone.
Thank
Have a
you.
good night, Darcy.
Good night.
Okay, so we still have some tweaks to make or some final decisions to make, but we can start though with our interviews though, because we have people waiting. Okay. So Michelle,
Yes, one second, let me.
if you would, thank you. Mr. Anani has joined us. Councilmember Anani, how you doing in Worcester?
Doing well.
First interview is entering right now. He's in.
Hello, can you hear me, Mr. Mancini?
I can. Hello.
How you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you.
Good. So thank you for your interest. My name is Kelly Kimbrough. I'm the chair of the Public Safety Committee here on the council. Again, I'll reiterate, thank you for your interest. This is a very important work. We're looking to add members to our Violence Prevention Task Force. As a part of this process tonight, what I'll do is you can open, introduce yourself, tell us why you want to be a part of the task force, and then members will ask questions.
Okay. My name is Joe Mancini. I have been involved in the justice system as my profession. Joined Schenectady County Probation in 1989. Prior to that, I had worked for Saratoga County Department of Social Services. I started as a probation officer and worked my way up to become the director of probation. I was the deputy director of probation and deputy commissioner of youth and families in Schenectady County. And through that work, one of the most important jobs I had or memorable for me was when I was a juvenile intensive officer, when I worked with youth. And especially youth of color, I would work with them and could see, and this is way back in, how the system responded to them and how unfairly they responded to them. And oftentimes, and I had an intensive caseload where most probation departments that had intensive caseloads had high rates of violations because it was high monitoring. Ours was high engagement. And so the youth would meet me, and I'm a big guy, and it would be like, oh no, like I haven't been messed with enough, and like nobody's going to do that anymore. And so I was always working with them and the systems around them and finding the supports, because it was very clear to me that they didn't have the supports that you would hope someone would have and a youth would have. And you could see over time just that anger and complacency that they would get, and lack of any hope or possibility in their lives, and that would just manifest. So my job was always to say there's a better future for you. And the communities sometimes weren't so good at that. And what I would do is find those systems around them to wrap around them and get them engaged. So that was my work. We created a Center for Juvenile Justice in Schenectady County, and did a lot of work there. Actually, was part of our county when we were dealing with a suicide contagion, where 4 African-American females had taken their lives by suicide. It was a horrible situation and time, and we responded and worked through that. 2015, I was appointed. I went to work for the Department of Office of Children and Family Services as Associate Commissioner for the Office of Community Partnerships. They asked me to come there and design their aftercare model. So I did that from 2015. We developed an aftercare model. And one of the things I did is I looked at, what are the risk factors? And it's like, our youth come to our facilities, and there's a lot of structure and there's a lot of good behavioral programming, but then they go back to the same communities. And I'm like, what's the work we're doing in the communities? We invest an awful lot of money in these high-end facilities, but then they go back to the same factors that were contributing to the need for them to come to a facility. So we created some community-based programming. We credible messengers similar to the SNUG model, parent advocates that worked with the family. I wanted to really get how do we invest in the communities? Like, we have these big agencies and they just keep getting bigger, but how do we reinvest that so community agencies get stronger so they can support themselves? It was over a 5-year period. This grant was for it. I was able to get that done, develop an aftercare model. So that's still running. And then I retired in 2018, February. My mother had Alzheimer's. She ended up in the hospital. My father was struggling. I was traveling a lot. So I'm like, I can retire. So I retired. Did a little work part-time, and then I got a call and asked Joe, do you want to come out of retirement? This past July, the position was available here at the Albany, the Capital District Security Detention Facility, and I've been here since July. Seeing a lot of the violence, the gang violence, the youth coming in here, being able to talk to them, seeing where they're at. And I saw a news story, and then I said, you know what, let me see what I can do. We're getting a lot of youth here. Maybe I can contribute some, because I have a lot of experience working with community, working with violence and youth and families. I said, maybe I can contribute some in that way, rather than me sitting here as they're, warehousing them. When they leave here, maybe I can help get the conditions, improve the conditions, so when they come back to a better place, or they don't end up here at all. And so I thought I would apply, and here I am.
So thank you. Which member wants to start? Mr. Hoey?
Hi, Mr. Mancini. Thank you for coming and taking time to talk to the committee. This is a new task force committee that's been put together by the city. There's still some, areas that we're not sure how the committee will go, like size and stuff like that. But, we do have a goal. And the goal at the end is that we try to prevent the summer violence. And hopefully, come up with ideas of what we can do to do that. So my question is, the way we foresee it, because the committee will probably start in January. Do you have the time, and will you stay committed to this committee? Especially the period in the spring, because I see your resume. You have an awful lot of stuff going on, and do you have the time to commit to this? And thank you for applying.
You're welcome. Yeah, right now, this is my, I'm running this place and, still dealing with my father, but other than that, yeah, I do. And I think this is real important. And yes, I do.
Thank you.
Mr. Valorant?
Thank you. Thank you for volunteering for this position. I always find it great when we see so many individuals willing to volunteer their time to try to help our city. What we're also looking to do is to build a group of diverse individuals from different backgrounds, different experiences, different perspectives, so that we can have everyone's not just input, but use everyone's strengths to try to address this issue. So, how good are you at working with individuals you might not normally agree with, as well as but you still have the same common goal?
Yeah, I've been very effective at that. Actually, in the capital region, there's what's called the Capital District, the Capital Region Youth Justice Team, which was a collaboration of 9 counties and all different agencies to come together to do juvenile reform. And I headed that up. I started that and gave that up when I went to the state. But it was working with all different people from all different agencies and just trying coming together to find solutions around juvenile justice. So I have a lot of experience dealing with families. I mean, I love going into communities, dealing with families of all, just being there and finding out, where they're at and where they're coming from. So at whatever level, I'm very comfortable with.
Thank you.
Hello, Joe. Thank you for applying and bringing your experience to offer this council, this city. You have, in your experience, having those youth around you in these facilities, you probably hear and know a lot of why this is going on, or at least why you think it's going on. And could you say why you think that there's such an uprising? Is there anything?
Yeah, boy, that's a tough
We
question.
had a psychologist on last night, okay? And he said they need the high, okay? And there's nothing, other people say there's not a lot for the kids to do, which I believe are all true. And I just wondered if you hear more in that facility than what people are acknowledging. Some say it's gangs, some say it's COVID, some say it's definitely poverty in the life and whatever, but
when I sit and talk with youth, like it's and understand hearing them, and it's interesting. Like I go under like people acting in accordance with how they view the world, and so many of them really don't see a future for themselves. This is their life. This is it's almost like their default future is coming to a place like this, death or prison. They've seen family members and so there's not a lot of opportunities that they see happening for them. And they respond in accordance with how they view their future of how they see it. And if there's not enough influences and opportunities to try to redirect that and engage them, because everyone has a talent and an interest and some level of competency, is how do you tie into that and find that? And we instill something that tells them there's something possible for them. There's something different. There's a different type of future they can have, and trying to get them to really see that where they can internalize it.
now in your facility, you have youth from all over the Capital District, correct?
Yes.
Do you see any hostility between the different groups? Say some people say there's a thing between Schenectady and Albany, Troy and Albany.
Yeah, because of the rules around confidentiality, I've got to be real careful on how I talk about that, because anything in there, there is, here we maintain a high level of safety and security. So, there are factions, and we manage it. But again, I can't get into too many specifics because of confidentiality.
The only other thing I want to say is, most of the crime comes out in the summer. But Kelly, I don't think we're just looking at summer violence. There's violence that's going on all year now. I mean, so there's a lot to confront. Thank you, Joe.
And it's always interesting is the systems around, is how responsive are they? And are they really operating under the same goal? Like, what do we want? We want communities, youth, and families to be safe and thrive. And are they coming together with that in mind? Not getting so caught up in turf or everybody has to walk in their line of authority, but are they genuinely coming together to solve the problem? Are they too risk averse to not do that? Are they willing to come together, really share their resources and share in the risk? Rather than, I think in a real sensitive political environment, there's a lot of finger pointing and a lot of avoiding the risk. And is it an atmosphere of agencies' willingness to come together and really be committed to the mission and be willing to really put themselves at a little bit of, at some risk and some level of commitment, because it's always easy to kind of step back and, well, our mandates are this. Like, did you get a real genuine sense of the agencies that have that commitment and level of confidence and safety that if something does go wrong, is there a real partnership that we've established or you've established that, we're all in it together and there's no finger pointing? Because it's a very litigious society and agencies are really risk averse. But this is hard work and there's got to be a commitment and a partnership that we're in it together.
Well, Joe, I just want to say thank you for making a commitment. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Yes. So Joe, again, thank you. You have a particular skill set and area of expertise. How do you see that working with this task force?
Just bringing my, my passion for this work, knowing communities and knowing the system at all different levels, and trying to bring that guidance to this team to help in our work and directions and solve problems. Look at, what we're looking at the issues and being real about it. That. And just, sharing my experiences, what's worked, what wasn't, and what didn't, and possible, landmines to avoid.
Okay, thank you. And here's Mr. Nani. Yeah, well, just one more question. So, geez, I can't remember my question. I'm trying to figure Sonia's out and squeeze it in there. We have a colleague that's missing tonight that participated last night, and I'm trying to fill in a gap and forgot my own question. Oh, so in your position, you obviously see a lot of these kids from the area, but do you ever get to see them in a different setting? You ever out in the community, engage in the community, aside from your work?
Yes, not as much in this position, but especially in probation. What I liked with my role in probation is I worked and lived in the same community and always did community events with the youth and always had that, made sure I had those opportunities. We'd have block parties and we'd bring our probation officers would bring the youth to those positive events and just be part of that community. And just seeing them in that community without, good opportunities was always something I enjoyed doing and make sure that we did and made sure that happened.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Nani?
Thank you, Joe. Wonderful, impressive resume. This is an important task force. There was just some reports that just came out as it relates to shootings and crimes in the city, and we have seen and witnessed our fair share. I have a few questions. The first one is more so, what do you believe is the problem or disconnect in law enforcement and the community relations?
The lack of trust I think that, it goes back historically, how police have been viewed, and police have had a long history of targeting minority communities and doing and enforcing at disproportionate ways and methods, and that has just grown. And where police that come on duty now, they go. I mean, I did a lot of drive arounds when we were involved, when I was involved in Operation Impact in the city of Schenectady, and you had I was riding with this officer, was a really nice guy, but you drive up in certain communities, you're being spit at, sworn at, and I go, wow, do you see this every day? So there's a real lack of civility and trust. So so an officer, after so many years of that, boy, you're going to get really cynical and tainted. Now, this is something you inherited that has go way back to a way that we policed certain communities where we rolled up on folks and didn't give them opportunities to, you okay, or in a way or an approach that wasn't threatening, where you approach folks with, like, as if there was something wrong with them, and it wasn't a good, wasn't an appropriate response. You didn't give them up. I don't think, and historically, was no opportunity to say you're a human being and what's going on. It was just, that's just how it was, and it's just kind of been a practice where I think is getting a lot better. But it's a historic thing that has gone on that needs a lot of healing and partnership to begin to address. But it's a tough one.
Yeah. My next question is, from your experience in your field, can you share how the pandemic crisis has exacerbated the violence in the Black community?
I think it's contributed to increased, the increased risk factors, employment opportunities, available resources, more isolation and frustration, and it impacts Black communities and communities of poverty at a higher rate, and just kind of contributes to that overall exacerbation of an already terrible situation. It's more of that, don't we matter, and we're alone in this. And there's just a lot of boiling of that frustration that is happening.
Gotcha. And my last question is more so, the violence that we're witnessing in the city, do you believe it's government shortcoming or is it personal responsibility?
I'll tell you, when I worked for government and I love public service, I always worked under the assumption it's my responsibility, because to say that's not the case means I'm not responsible. Not as a blame thing or that, it's a place to stand in. This is my area of accountability, so we need to do everything we can to resolve it. To say it's their personal responsibility gets us off the hook. And I don't see that. If we're sending folks away at high rates of incarceration, whatever, no. When I took over in Schenectady County, the juvenile unit, we had the highest rate of placing youth in the state per capita. We became, after a couple of years, the lowest. Because no, if we're sending youth to institutions, that's for me, a quality assurance indicator. Something in our community is not working. So what do we need to do to address it? Obviously, yeah, people are responsible to behave, but that's occurring, and I'm a public servant. That is my responsibility as a public servant and a government official to do everything I can to resolve it.
Thank you so much, Joe.
Okay, so Joe, that's the end of our questions. Do you have any questions for us?
Well, a little bit about, what's your plan? What's the plan? What are the next steps? And
so next steps, this is our last night of the interviews. We'll finish these, make our choice. We'll within a week, we'll let members know of our selections, but we don't see the group getting started until maybe the second week of January, just being realistic, to have like that initial meeting and coming together to discuss how we're going to proceed.
I just, I want to thank you all for doing what you're doing. It's real important. And if I can help out, I'm happy to do that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joe, and have a great holiday season.
Yes.
Thank you. You too.
Happy holidays.
Take care.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Happy
Bye.
holidays.
Thank you.
Okay. So whenever you're ready, Michelle, you can keep them coming.
He's in.
Okay, thank you. See there, Mr. McNaughton?
I am.
Okay. So, hey, I'm Kelly Kimbrough, Chairman of the Public Safety Committee here for the council. Thank you for your interest in getting involved in this position. We're doing the interviews for Violence Prevention Task Force, and of which you're an applicant. The way we'll proceed is I'll turn it over to you to introduce yourself and tell us why you want to be a part of the task force, and then council members will ask questions.
Well, thank you, Councilmember Kimbrough, and good evening to all the other esteemed members of the council. Thank you for having me this evening. My name is Tom McNaughton. I'm a 25-year resident of the city of Albany. I moved here from Buffalo in the mid-90s. I lived in the city there, and I'm a city guy. So when it came time to move to the capital region, I picked the city as my home. My career's been in law enforcement, disaster response and preparedness, and security, risk-based security needs. Currently, I'm employed by the state at the Public Service Commission, where my responsibility lies with compliance for the utilities with regards to best practices from a physical security standpoint for critical infrastructure. Prior to that, I had 10 years on the police department in the city of Buffalo, which was a large urban department, about three and a half times the size of Albany. The city is, the department's probably 2.5 or 3x, at least it was at the time. I worked in a high crime neighborhood. I actually lived in that neighborhood, although I was fortunate enough to live just on the outskirts of some of the hot zones, if you will. But I had a long tenure in dealing with all the societal and justice related issues that we find ourselves dealing with now. I left the city of Albany in '95 after 10 years in the PD to work for the Organized Crime Task Force in the Attorney General's office. I then worked for the insurance department for about 8 years as a frauds investigator. Then I did a bit of time in the corporate world, private security, enterprise security risk management for a local cable provider. And I went back to the state a little over a year ago. I am a homeowner in the city of Albany. I am a taxpayer in the city of Albany. And I am the parent of 3 teenagers in the city of Albany. And in listening to your meeting prior to the interviews, there were some very very salient points made by different council members. And I think, and I don't know the breadth and depth of all the candidates, but I'd like to believe I offer a viewpoint that has that is rooted in multiple points of interest with regards to what this, I believe what this committee wants to get done. I live in the city of Albany. Everything that happens in the city of Albany affects everyone else. And it really doesn't matter what district you live in. The type of violence we've seen over the last, we'd like to believe 10 months, but I think we all know that the root cause of some of this stuff has existed for some time now. You know, back when I was in uniform, I had a captain that said, the things that people are predisposed to do, they are just more predisposed during times of high stress. And I agree with Joe Mancini's points. I think the pandemic has caused some of this stuff to become more frequent. It's certainly raised the stress level in all manner of our community, in all portions, in every district. Everybody's stressed out a little more. And when those individuals with less hope, if you will, find themselves stressed, and they are surrounded by societal pressures that could cause for less than legal resolution to issues, then they're more inclined to go down that path. So, I believe that, this has created a problem, but I think the underlying causes go well beyond, last February when this pandemic started knocking on our door. I'd like to believe I've been active in the neighborhood. I've been active as a coach in youth sports, Little League and CYO. I have three teenagers, 15, 15, and 16. So they're right in the sweet spot of, I think, the target group that you guys are trying to make an impact on. And I deal with them every day, and I deal with their friends every day. And as a concerned citizen, I'd like to be able to offer some input on this committee. I'm fully invested in the city, and it's not on some grand global philosophical societal change. I think there's sometimes you just have to put your work boots on and get something done. And I think this is the type of committee that needs to do that. Listening to some of the other comments, I would agree, having served on committees before, I think Mr. Hoey's recommendation that the Public Safety Council hold ex officio status on this committee. I think that's a great point. I think that would serve to empower the committee members a little more. I really don't know what else I can say other than I'm glad that there is somebody that sees the value in putting some heads together in the community to try to find some solutions, none of which, frankly, will be simple in either their design or implementation. But, God hates a coward. And if you don't want to try something, you're falling down on the job. And I'm more than happy to help in any way. I submitted my name for this position some weeks ago when I had heard that there was a dearth of applicants. I'm glad to hear that you've got a pretty good number that have responded since then. And I'd like to be considered to be part of it.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Hoey.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. McNaughton, for coming and taking time and actually doing research and listening into the committee hearings as we've been going along. You probably know my question. It's, this is a relatively new committee, task force, and its goal is to try to reduce crime that seems to peak in the summer. Now, I'm not saying it doesn't go, it ends in the summer. No, it goes all year round, but the summertime is when the incidence levels rise. So, my feeling is that this committee is going to be really busy in the spring and starting in January at some point. Do you have the time and the commitment to spend on this committee? And they might have subcommittees formed out of it. But what is your commitment level? Because, this is a volunteer position, and, we want to make sure the members do show up to the meetings. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hoey. Yes, I am fully inclined to be committed to the extent necessary and beyond to meet meet the requirements the committee presents. I have nothing pressing as far as long-range plans between now and the end of the spring, early summer. And I agree that I think unless we want a repeat of last summer's events, we really probably need to have something in place, even before springtime, because it takes time from implementation. I agree. I think it will be a very, very busy spring and winter season for this committee. because it also will require buy-in from all the affected parties, both on the criminal justice side and social justice side. If we don't have collaboration from all the stakeholders, I'd be really concerned that our efforts would be for naught. I think collaboration is the key to the success to a committee such as this.
Thank you.
Well, you kind of touched on my my question. But first and foremost, I again thank you for applying. Thank you for your willingness to volunteer. We are very fortunate to have so many individuals in our city that are willing to give up their time, especially when you have three young ones that I'm sure can take plenty of your time already. You know, but you know, we do appreciate that. My question is a simple one. It has it's based on what you said about cooperation. And we are looking to put a team together of individuals from different backgrounds, different ways of thinking, different occupations, different perspectives, to try to tackle this this problem that we have. How well are you at working with individuals you may have disagreements with?
Well, given the jobs that I've had in the past, I have been in the unfortunate sometimes position of having to compel amended behavior. I've worked in compliance, I've worked as a regulator, I've worked as an investigator, I've worked as a police officer. You have to find common ground in every one of those positions. And, you know, at the end of the day, the common ground, the goal, the mission statement, if you will, for this committee is to do the things that you have a reasonable expectation that will be successful in deterring the growth of the type of behavior that we saw last year. Now, if we keep that in perspective and we all buy into that, those little things, those little arguments, oftentimes boil down to semantics. As long as we believe, when I was in high school, I rowed, and I rowed on an 8-man crew, and we were completely different people, but the boat went the most seamlessly through the water when we were all in sync. And I've used that analogy in every job I've ever had. You have to be in sync. And we can have minor disagreements in the background, but we have to present our case with one voice and a level of commitment that is going to be required for success. So I have no problem with that historically. Currently, I didn't mention, but I'm on the Civil Service Commission. I was appointed by the mayor 7 years ago, reappointed earlier this year. You know, my job there, as I see it, is to ensure the clear, transparent, and defensible process by which citizens of the city have a fair path towards employment. And, you know, in that general sense, fair, transparent, and defensible is the way we should conduct, I would think, your committee's business, whether we're a committee of 1 or a committee of 17.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you again, Mr. McNaughton. So with your history, background, skill set, how do you see that helping out on the task force?
Well, you know, I worked in patrol, and patrol, you saw everything. You saw people at their best and their worst. And it wasn't so long ago, or maybe it was long ago, but it had such an indelible impact on me that I remember every bit of it. When people are involved with law enforcement, it is the most stressful time, at least for them, that they can imagine. So from a law enforcement standpoint, I think as it applies to how we would interact with public safety. And I think the department in the city of Albany has made great strides. And listen, it is a never-ending battle, and it will always be that. Nothing is perfect, but we can't let, you know, perfect be the enemy of good. And every time they make a a step. It's got to be a step. It's got to be commended and recognized. And I think they've attempted to make great strides in that. From my perspective, I think I have an idea of the type of things that will work. You know, the people on the street, they are not foolish. They don't suffer fools. So if we try to bring them something that's pie in the sky, they're not gonna buy it. They're gonna see through it. And I think it's gonna be superfluous to them. We have to be solid in our efforts and what we're gonna do. I think there has to be a tangible benefit both early on and long lasting. And a lot of it's gonna be philosophical in nature. And somebody asked Mr. Mancini, I mean, it was Mr. One of the councilmen asked him about, you know, personal responsibility versus government shortcomings. I don't think
Councilman Anani.
Yes, Councilman, thank you. I think it's not an either or, and it can't be. They are intertwined. At the root of all behavior issues, there has to be an underlying personal responsibility identified. You know, has government always done what they should, or are they doing what they should now? You can always find shortcomings in government. It's to minimize both sides to the effect that we can minimize some of the governmental shortcomings. That's what we have to identify. One of the things that I find when I read anything as it applies to broad-based assessments of behavior, whether it was last summer or 2 years ago or 5 years ago, the raw data excludes some components. And, you know, I think, and this is not meant as a disparaging remark, you're all elected officials, but sometimes politicians take the expedient route and they highlight the parts of a particular study that supports their belief. And I think we need to have a really deep dive look at the raw data that's drawn out of some of these studies. And if there's personal responsibility, you can't just lay it on the feet of a 15-year-old. There's communal issues. And I think we need to hold those people responsible, and it could be extended family members, but hold them responsible. Where there's government irresponsibility, then that's got to be identified as well, highlighted and identified. And those people need to be held accountable. But I think it's a really intertwined source of these shortcomings, societal shortcomings. How can I help? I don't know. I think I'm an idea guy. So if you give me a problem, I'll probably come up with an idea. I'd like to believe I'm better more often than I'm not at these types of solutions. I've been involved in other collaborative efforts, whether they were school-based at my kids' schools or work-based. I've worked in working groups at all levels of government, both on a regulatory side and investigative side. I've worked in criminal court, civil court, and I've worked with all types of people. So I don't know. I think I've just got a broad-based experience of dealing with people and processes. It's probably a long-winded answer, Mr. Kimber.
Yep. Thank you, sir. And so, I mean, you said you have teenagers and kids. So I imagine that you do some stuff out in the community and engage the community. I can see where you live, but do you ever get a chance to do any engagement of communities in some of these more challenging areas?
Not now, but I worked and grew up in some. So I'm not so far removed from it that I'm uncomfortable at it. Like I said, I'm a city guy. For all its warts and blemishes, I'm always going to be a city guy. And as I said before, what happens in one neighborhood, it has a direct impact on those surrounding neighborhoods. So I don't feel so removed from the lower wards as somebody sitting in Saratoga County might think I am, because I'm 2 miles away. And maybe we're not kindred spirits, but there's a community effect here that I think is something else that's got to be. This is a citywide program. It's to address issues in wards that have been dramatically impacted by violence. But it's a citywide issue. And what happens in the first ward has a direct impact in what happens in every other ward in the city, what happens in the third ward, what happens everywhere. And I think it has to be addressed as such. If you want buy-in from all the wards, their voices have to feel as though they're being heard as well. And this has to be a community effort.
Thank you, sir. Joe, did I skip you? I did, didn't I?
Yeah, but there wasn't a spot to jump in on. I've known Tom McNaughton for probably 16, 17 years, 20 years. He's always rolled up his sleeves and got involved in whatever needed to be done, whether it was in his neighborhood, our church. He's done it. He's willing to do it. I know that there's really no presence other than you, Kelly, being a former police officer. I'm not sure if you knew that, that is going to be on this task force. But I know that the call for applications is looking for community members from wards disproportionately impacted by violence. And I know that we're keeping that in mind. I just wanted Tom to know that, okay? So we're putting them all together, and again, we're varying the size of the council, so we'll see what we come up with, Tom, okay? We have to decide that other thing too first, so decide. Thank you, Tom, for applying.
Thanks, Joe.
Mr. Anani?
Hey, first, I just want to say thank you, Tom, for applying. This is quite frankly, I think this is one of the most important task force over the past couple of years. And it's great to see the resumes and cover letters. Really wonderful candidate. And I appreciate everything that you have done for the city and your background and your continued support for the city of Albany. You answered a few of my questions, so I want to thank you on that point. But I do have one that I do want to ask you. Do you feel that violence is more pronounced in the Black community than others? If so, what factors do you think contribute to it?
I think in this community, it has grown into that, yes. I think the overriding factor that supports increase in violence across this country is economic. And it happens to coincide with African-American communities in Albany. You know, some of our southern states, some of those same economically challenged communities are Hispanic in nature. My point is, I don't think you can take a broad brush and contend that the violence erupts in African-American communities only. I think it's predisposed by the economic pressures and the societal pressures that go with economic shortcomings in these communities. So why? I think that's the root cause. I think, you know, to Joe Mancini's point earlier, there is a just terribly sad lack of hope among our teenagers and our young adults in all these socially and economically depressed areas. In this particular instance, I think there's a large overlap in those that are also African-American. And, you know, we've got to figure out a way to drive these kids down a path that provides some hope, some optimism for them. And, you know, there's guys with a lot of letters on the wall that could sit in a big room and figure out all the reasons why that isn't happening. In a small scale, in a small sample, I think it's easier to drive some successes. And I think that is the greatest challenge to this committee. It's not just going to be about gun violence. It's going to be about overarching issues with regards to the lack of opportunity. How do we drive that here? And I think the gun violence will go, the reduction in gun violence will go hand in hand with an increase in opportunity, economic opportunity. And I think you got to find a way to get these individuals, these disaffected individuals, to understand the appreciation of having some skin in the game, having an opportunity to provide for yourselves. I think that it all lies there. And so, no, I don't think it's generally a broad-based black and white thing. I think it's the economic pressures that happen in this particular case to be overlapping in the African-American communities. And you can see it in the like the hopelessness that Joe Mancini discussed. And there is, I think it's tragic. Tragic lack of hope and optimism among this core group. You know, the 15, 16, 17-year-olds of today, we will want to be contributing members of society in 10 years. How are they going to be prepared for that? That's the question.
Man, I tell you, that was you know, I think about that a lot, and I try to share with my colleagues about the lack of hope in some of these communities. And I think you'd be a good member of this board. I really do. You know, at the beginning of the interview, I was kind of nervous a little bit, but I think you're exactly the kind of person we need on the board to kind of, you know, inspire a little bit sense of hope. So, well, I just want to say thank you so much for applying.
Thank you, Owasu.
Yes, Mr. McNaughton. So it's the part where I usually say we're done with our questions. Do you have a question for us? However, in the time that we've been engaging you, it's been brought to my attention by our counsel, Mr. Pichardo, that you can't sit on two city boards or committees at the same time, and you're on civil service.
Well, one is a commission, I believe, Alderman, and one is a committee. And as such, they have two different legal definitions.
Right. So I'll let our attorney speak to that. And I'm sure you could probably check in, because I know Corp Counsel's the chair, I think, of civil service or what have you. But JR?
Yeah, no, there's the second class cities law says no person shall hold two offices, and it doesn't distinguish between elected or appointed. And since civil service is an appointed and this is also an appointed position, there you would be dual holding.
I just like to ask a question. There was an individual that interviewed yesterday, and I think they were on CPRB and also applying for this. So I don't know. I'm pretty sure it's not just Tom that sits on multiple boards.
So we'll review all of them and make sure.
Right. So and yeah, Tom, can you just check in with Corp Counsel also about that? And so now I'm going to say, do you have any questions for us?
Well, evidently my next question will be with Pete. So I don't. I understand what your next steps are, and I thank you for entertaining my application, and I wish you all the best of luck going forward, whether I'm part of it or not.
Okay. Thank you.
Can I just say one comment? You know, these are going to be open meetings, so I'm not sure what the legal is going to get figured out. But I do want to make sure that everyone who has applied understands that these are still going to be open meetings, so there's still opportunities to get involved in multiple ways. I just want to put that out there because we do have a lot of excellent residents that are applying for this, and it's a good problem to have. It's a good problem to have that you have so many good people who are willing to, again, volunteer their time to help address this issue. So I don't want you to leave feeling defeated, and I don't want anyone else who's maybe looking at this feel defeated with the process. But I just wanted to say that, and again, we'll let the legal egos figure out the other that came up.
That's fine. Thank you, Member Ballerin. Are you trying to draw a distinction between these meetings and the ones that are held with the commissioner and the mayor with regards to openness? I didn't know if that was your point there. I fully understand that will be an opportunity to help, and I'll be glad to in any way that is asked of me. And again, I would like to wish you all best of luck. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you,
Yes,
Tom,
sir.
and have a good holiday season if I don't run into you.
Thanks, Joe. You too.
Okay. Okay, he's gone. So can we check on that, Mr. Pichardo? Not, obviously not now, but moving forward. So who, we have Kelly, is it Malaragan? Malaragan, that's who's next?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay.
Let me amend.
Can I make a suggestion? In the future, we have some of those things pop up. Let's deal with that offline.
After,
Yeah.
yeah, I apologize for that. I just, yeah, I probably could have waited. So,
Yeah, it's because we still don't know 100% one way or the other. So it's like,
Yeah.
and Owusu,
It's
you made a
live,
good point.
yeah.
Yeah.
Especially with the, and I think was a great candidate. She's a member of CPRB.
yeah.
On this, and I'd hate to lose her either, you know?
Yes,
Yeah.
we want to keep her engaged.
We gotta
So-
get that figured out.
Both
But
ways. That'll be fair.
hi,
How you doing? She's connecting.
Yeah, it's connecting still.
Okay, good. You're connected. Hello, Mrs. It's Malaragno. Is that how you pronounce it?
Melarano, but close.
Melaragno. Oh, okay.
Mhm.
Okay. My name is Kelly Kimbrough. I'm the chair of the Public Safety Committee here on the council. Thank you for your interest in joining our task force. So the way we'll proceed is we'll let you introduce yourself and tell us why you want to be a part of the task force, and then members will ask questions. So I'll
Great.
turn it over to you.
Great, thank you. My name is Kelly Melarano. I work for the Community Builders, which is a nonprofit affordable housing developer I work in the Albany office. I run the design and construction department. I have been working at the Mansion development on Grand Street and the surrounding neighborhoods for the past just about 2 years now. And one of the things that I see so heavily with our residents is that they're fearful. And it is one of the biggest challenges that we have as developers is keeping our residents safe and healthy and wanting to come home and feel that sense of home and community. And when I saw the advertisement for this on the news, it just happened to happen on a day when I was on Grand Street. We were installing some cameras on a resident's home, and someone pulled over and he told me that I was wasting my time putting money into this street, and we're wasting our time trying to prevent anything because things are going to continue to happen. And he used some expletives and told me that it was just all a waste of time. And I felt so disheartened because we have some really wonderful residents in our homes, and I felt sad and helpless. And so it happened to be the timing of the news program that I watched that posted that you were looking for members was right on the cusp of that incident that I had. And so I thought, well, this would be a really nice way to maybe be able to be impactful on a large scale, because we own 39 units right now, 11 buildings that are already inhabited. We've just purchased 4 more that we're going to fully rehab. And it would be nice to be able to bring their sentiment, that large grouping of people, into this sort of a forum and be able to speak on behalf of a larger community and get their voices heard.
Okay, thank you for that. Were you done? You ready to move
I'm
on?
all set, yeah. Yeah.
Okay, all right, so Mr. Hoey.
Yeah, hi, Kelly. Thank you for coming, taking the time to interview with the committee. We really appreciate it. I tell the different applicants, this is like flying in a plane and putting it together as you're flying. This committee is relatively new, and being developed as we move along. As far as size, when we're going to meet, and so on. The goal of this committee is to try to reduce the summer violence, and we're just coming into winter now, so there'll probably be a lot of meetings between now and hopefully right before the summer begins in June. So there will be probably a lot of meetings, maybe subcommittees. Do you have the time and the commitment to put yourself forward to do what is required, especially these first few months, which are going to be critical for the beginning of this committee?
It's my understanding that the meetings are after hours, or are they during the workday? What's the preference of timing?
That hasn't been decided yet, so we don't know. It's going to be, a chair will step up, or I don't know how we're going to pick the chair, but we're putting together a large group, so it's going to be interesting. But with Zoom and with COVID and the Zoom meetings, it should be, Again, I'm just throwing that out there that,
No, and I feel like it's important enough for me that I can make time. I make time for a lot of things of less importance. So I certainly would be able to make time for this as well.
Oh, thank you.
In terms of,
Kelly,
yep.
what other talents would you bring to this committee, this task force, other than working and looking to design and bring housing into that neighborhood?
So we're a local developer in general. I'm also, well, we're not local. I mean, that firm is local, but I'm local. I'm from this area. My brothers are police officers, and I grew up in Troy. This is home to me. I do have a lot of, local connections that I would like to bring in, and just ideas to bring about. Years ago was the trustee for my parish council at our church. And one of the things that we also did was a social justice committee, and that was also in downtown Troy. And so we had some good ideas come about from that I think I could help bring forward, just working with the community and a different perspective. I think the fact that I go into the residents' homes frequently, I'm not just the person that does the technical for building, I also go in for maintenance and other safety issues. But I took a big interest in this neighborhood specifically after talking with all the residents. I just recently did a run through of everybody's unit, and working with our security vendor, Massive Mesh, they're also local. It just kind of opened my eyes to the struggles that happen there. The seasonal change is night and day, where I would walk there often by myself and never feel nervous. And now I don't walk there if it's a little bit nice out, because it is a little bit nerve-wracking. We are, in our new design that's coming in, we're putting in a police substation on 71 Grand. So we have started partnerships as a company with the police department, and I would like to strengthen that and see if we can branch out further to the community, not just our buildings, but that actual Grand Street neighborhood. The historic Mansion District is a community that deserves saving.
So you believe that more police in the neighborhood would make it a safer this summer?
I don't know that I think more police. I think a trusted police presence. I think if there were a substation there, having the visual of, because we're intending to put it at 71 Grand, which you have a liquor store on the corner of Madison and Grand Street. There's a lot of activity that happens kind of in that space, and across the street at 70 and 72, they seem to be pretty big hot spots for incidents. We were hoping that, having it's more of a community police officer when you have a substation. They can't really, there's not booking or anything like that happening. So we were hoping that that kind of would bring a different level of safety and visual safety, perceived or otherwise, and hopefully it would kind of snowball from there.
Now, you have two brothers that are police officers in Albany or Troy?
Mm-hmm. My brother's in Rensselaer, and the other one was county, but he just retired.
Oh, okay. Good for him. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I just want to point out, and I'm telling other people, if we're undecided on the size of this task force right now, but the meetings are always going to be open, so you can always have input. So please keep it in mind. Thank you for
Great,
applying.
thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for applying. Thank you for giving us your time today. Thank you for your willingness to volunteer on this committee. We're looking to put a committee of diverse individuals from different backgrounds, different experiences, different perspectives, different viewpoints. Can you hear me? Can you hear
My
me?
sound got disconnected, so I had to
Okay.
switch over to my computer.
Okay, that's okay.
Sorry.
No, that's fine. So we're looking to put a community together of diverse individuals from different perspectives, different viewpoints, different backgrounds, to try to tackle this in a holistic approach. How well do you work with individuals who you may not always agree with?
I do fine. I mean, I work in construction, so that's the nature of our business. And just generally speaking, that's my personality. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. So you work for a community builder, so you're in the area and in the community, obviously engaging. You do that for work. Do you do any of that type of engagement during in your personal life?
Less now than I did before I had 4 kids and worked full time, but definitely prior to having our baseball team size family, I was always very active in, like I had mentioned, our church groups, and that was the avenue that I explored that in. But I have a strong connection to the community in general, the larger Capital District community, and I want to be more active. I haven't had much of an opportunity. I only started with the community builders about 2 years ago actually now. Wow, time flies. Prior to that, I worked for the state for 11 years. And when you work for a government, you just kind of, you're there, you're at your government buildings and there's nothing around you. You aren't as interested in the community. You're just kind of, it's a narrow focus. I took this job with the exact business of getting involved with people and making a difference. My skill set happens to be that I'm an architect. So that's where I'm able to help. When I was before on the church council, I was on the building restoration and the social justice committee and different avenues like that. And then I kind of lost that when I moved to East Greenbush and changed churches. They don't have the same groups. And, now I want to get back into the community and really make real tangible differences on the ground.
Thank you very much. Mr. Anani?
Thank you so much, Kelly, for your interest and wonderful resume. Definitely, it's more than qualified to be on this task force. I have a few questions. The first one is more so, what do you believe is the problem or disconnect between law enforcement and communities of color?
Wow. I think it's trust on both sides, and there's ignorance. And I think that when people aren't transparent and they go into a situation on either side, I'm saying, goes into a situation with a preconceived notion of a person, then if you're reacting on fear and not on actual knowledge, then your reactions aren't right. They typically are wrong. And so I think a lot of what I see going on is ignorance and fear. And I think if people took a minute to know people and listen, I think if we listened a lot more, then we would be able to act on intelligence and on emotional intelligence and react to a real situation and not a broad idea of what you think the situation could be.
Thank you. My next question is more so from your experience in your field. Can you share how the pandemic crisis has exacerbated the violence in the city of Albany, or more so in the Black community here?
I did notice that, so in the beginning of the pandemic, our neighborhood was really very quiet. And then it was sort of like people had been so disconnected from all of the normal things that create normalcy in your daily life, the social connections, the connections to healthcare and to just people, and to have that fully severed. And you know, even in some instances you have the opportunity for this kind of contact. I think it's a real mental health crisis, and you lose control. And I see that a lot of when I see people out, it almost feels like people have been so restrained and lost control over their day-to-day routine that what's coming out is like all these different emotions are coming out in negative ways, and maybe amplified. I see it, and we have a development in Schenectady. I see it there. The same thing. It was like once restrictions got lifted a little bit, people gained a little bit of control, but they also had a lot of kind of built up anxiety and that anger that had been building from that kind of loss of control.
And last question, let's see, easy one. The violence in the city, do you believe it's government shortcomings or personal responsibility?
I would say it's probably a mixture of both. I couldn't pretend to know specifically what the cause or the solution is. And that's a big piece of why I wanted to come here more to learn and be able to understand better, and myself to understand so I can react with intelligence and an understanding rather than, you know, a statistic readout.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, so thank you, Kelly. We're at the close of our questions. Do you have any questions for us?
I just have more of like a comment. So I really appreciate the time to speak to all of you, and I'm excited to just have met this whole group. And I don't know, you know, I'm probably the least qualified for your council because I've never done anything like this before, but I really hope you do consider me, because I would love to learn what needs to be done and what can be done. And I would love to spend my energies and use my talents in that way. I'm really pleased that you let me come to this point and get interviewed. So I really appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for your interest. And we need all types. We're looking for diversity, diversity of thought, diversity of employment, skill sets. So there's no wrong person for this. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Have a good night.
You too.
Day.
One second. Hold on.
This is Mr. Pratt.
Yes,
Yes, let me,
I got it, Michelle.
thank you. Whew.
He's in, Kelly.
Look, yes. Can you hear me, Mr. Pratt?
Yeah, I can.
Yes, thank you, sir. I apologize. We're running a little bit late. My name is Kelly Kimbrough. I'm the chair of the Public Safety Committee here on the council. Again, thank you for your interest. This is important work and we need good people. What I'll do is I'll turn it over to you so you can introduce yourself and just tell us why you want to be on the task force, after which it'll be followed up by questions from council members. So thank you.
Okay. Well, my name is John Pratt. I've lived in Albany since 1985 when my parents moved here. I graduated Colony High School, went to the military. Currently work for the Department of Corrections and Community Service. And I think that this is important work because I think that our youth lack value. You know, I think that they're have been devalued in society in general. And I think that it's important to start getting that message out there that they are valued and they matter. And I think once they realize that they matter, I think that they will start to, look at things in a different light, like they have an opportunity to do something else, do something greater with their time.
Okay. Thank you, sir, for that intro. Mr. Hoey.
Yeah, good evening, Mr. Pratt, and thank you for coming, taking the time to talk to the committee and, and be interviewed. I've been telling the other applicants, this is like flying a plane and putting it together at the same time. This is a relatively new committee, task force that we're putting together. And, the main goal is to try to cut down on the violence that occurs in the summertime. But, the violence goes year round, but the main focus is, for this year at least, I think, will be, trying to quell the violence for the summer of 2021. So the committee is going to have to meet, in the winter and into the spring, and you might imagine that there'll be a lot of meetings, maybe subcommittees, more meetings. Do you have the time and the the capability to serve in this type of role?
Yes, my overall work hours are generally 8 to 4. There are occasions when, I'm required to work later than that because of incidents that are taking place. I do have young kids, but as long as there's a schedule, I can generally work around, I can make my schedule work with what's planned already on as long as there's some notice.
Thank you.
Hello, John. Thank you very much for applying for this task force. And the one person I don't believe that I would have to ask if you're an open-minded person. Sometimes I would think that someone in law enforcement for going on 30 years, is that right, from the military on, you might have a little bit of tunnel vision. But when you open your opening statement saying that youth matter and they lack value, that says a lot about your intent on being here. Your life experience are just important and valuable. Life taught me not to judge people in humility, respect, compassion, empathy. That's the type of person I think that this task force needs, and it's very important to me. Thank you. Thank you for applying.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your service to our country. You have a very impressive resume. And thank you for your willingness to apply and spend and volunteer on this committee. I do want to piggyback on one question that I'm asking all the candidates is, we are looking to put together a very diverse group of individuals for this committee, individuals from different backgrounds, different experiences, different philosophies, different ways of looking at things. And we're looking to do that because I personally believe everyone has a strength. And if you allow those individuals to work those strengths, we may be able to come up with something to deal with these issues that we have. Like you said, and other individuals have said before you, this is not a 2020. We've had this issue for decades. So with all that said, how good are you at working with individuals that you normally don't agree with, individuals that you may not have the same perspective and background as, individuals that you normally wouldn't hang out with?
Well, what I do for work, I'm an investigator, currently, and as a Black male working in law enforcement or particularly in the Department of Corrections, it's challenging, right? Because there are people who believe that, you know, I'm there and I'm going to take the word of inmates, you know, because I'm a Black male. And primarily the inmates are Black men. But then, to contrary, Black inmates also feel that I'm supposed to take their side for the same reason. So I think that it's important for me to gather the facts of any situation, you know, trying to gather as much information as possible, to listen to everyone. That's how you get all the information, and you're able to make a better decision with that information. So it's extremely important to take the time to listen to people, even if their perspective is a little bit different than yours, for those reasons.
Thank you.
So thank you, Mr. Pratt. And as a former police officer, 20-year with the Albany Police Department, I can appreciate that, what you just said about, you know, Black inmates versus white. It really, you get put in a spot and looked at in a certain way. So it's not easy. It's a tough job. So thank you. I don't have a question. It's really more of a comment. I'm pleasantly surprised. We've had a number of folks in law enforcement put in for this task force, and none of them are offering law enforcement solutions, which I think is great, because they're looking to do it through community and take a different approach, and you fall into that group. So I'm happy for that. Hopefully I get to see you on the other side. You'd be a great addition to the team. Thank you.
Thank you. I hope that I can help you out.
Okay, Mr. Anani.
Yeah, John, thank you so much, good brother, for your service and everything that you have done for the city. I just have a list of questions, and the first one is more so the violence in the city. Do you believe it's government shortcoming or it's personal responsibility?
I think there's a combination. I think every individual has to take responsibility for their own actions. But I think that there's a systematic issue that we have to deal with as well. I think there's a trauma issue that we have to deal with. You know, one of the things that I've looked at is, you know, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And if people don't have the economic resources, you know, to put food on their tables, you know, they're going to look other places to try and do that. If they don't feel valued, you know, they're going to, the way I see it, you know, look to sell drugs, to purchase clothing and valuables and such to try and increase that their self-worth. So it all comes back to economics and having an opportunity to be able to make money legitimately, to be able to feel valued and establish that worth that they're seeking.
My next question is, what do you believe is the problem or disconnect between officers and communities of color?
Trust. I think there's a lack of trust, you know, on both sides. And then I think there's also a lack of understanding. You know, I think that from a male perspective, a civilian's perspective, there's a history of violence between Black men and law enforcement. So I think that's an issue because it's continuing on today. But, you know, and I think also that there are some officers who don't understand the culture to some degree. So for me, when someone gets a little bit animated, I don't get fearful of that because I've been around people who've conducted themselves that way, family members, friends. So I guess I'm a little more patient, and I don't see violence as the solution to, whatever the resolution is. I think you have to have a conversation. You have to engage the people. You have to talk to them.
Gotcha. And my next one, do you feel gun violence is more pronounced in the Black community than others? If so, what factors contribute to that?
I don't know that. I don't know that gun violence is more pronounced in Black communities than others. I know that it's reported more. Meaning that we hear it on the news more. I don't know how factual that is because I haven't done that research. But I do know from speaking to people in the community that a lot of Black men, youth, are carrying guns. And I know that that's an issue.
Yeah. And last question, from your experience in your field, can you share how the pandemic crisis has exacerbated the violence in the city of Albany?
It goes back to economics, I think, but I'll add to that people are stressed. There's a lot more anxiety right now, I think. Certainly I feel it, in my own life, the anxiety because of COVID and, trying to deal with work, everything else that's going on in society, with Breonna Taylor and George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery and others, the pandemic. I think that's causing a lot of stress on a lot of people. And if they don't have a means to deal with that stress, I think they're seeking violence as the answer.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to just add that committee member Sonia Frederick is here. Ms. Frederick, would you like to just jump in for a sec? Are you okay?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. We're also joined with our clerk, Fire Clerk Daniel Gillespie. I must have missed you before. So thank you, sir. At this point, the questions we're done asking the questions. Do you have any questions for us?
Yes. What do you guys have any thoughts about how to stop this yourselves at this point?
Well, there are a lot of different answers to that, but the reason we're pulling together this group is to try to get a diverse group of folks together from with diverse ideas and thoughts and ways of looking at things to come together. Because there's no one person that's going to come up with a solution for this. We really need to get together on this and work through it. And this is our attempt to do that.
Okay. Do you see this as a long-term objective?
Yes, I do. And I mean, other members could jump in if they want to. Again, this year was a terrible year for gun violence, but again, it's been around. It ebbs and flows over the last couple of years. We've had high years, low years. But when you say long-term, it's a long-term issue that we're going to be working on. But also the idea is to keep the task force going again, because this isn't an issue that's going to go away. So there'll be a need to have these discussions and work through these issues. And again, the idea is to take, kind of a problem-solving approach, not throw, law enforcement's going to do what they do. But we really want to make a lasting change and impact this issue that we're having. And the way to do that is, I think, the approach that we're taking.
Okay.
Did any other members care to?
I just wanted to jump in, John, and it's a 2-year commitment to the committee, and then we'll, other, people want to stay on, or I don't know how that'll work out, but we're only asking people to stay for 2, commit to 2 years.
But if you choose to stay on it beyond that, that's an option.
Yes.
Great. How many people are you looking to have on the committee?
That's a good question. We're still working through that because it's a combination of some of the public safety members that you see here. We want more community members than politicians and elected, city workers, if you will. We want this to be a community driven, as grassroots as we can get. I mean, we have a diversity of professions, really. I mean, we've got PhDs, we've got architects, it's really, I'm really happy to see the swath of folks that we had apply, and because it's going to be diverse, and you're all kind of saying the same thing, but you come from different places. And I think the differences between folks is what's going to make this really, really work.
Okay, great.
One thing I wanted to jump in and say was that I think part of the reason we saw a lot of the uptick this year, part of it has to do with the fact that the alternative, interventions were out of commission because of the pandemic and because of all the financial restraints. But this is a committee that we're hoping will be around for some time. It's in law to be around for some time, so that it focuses on how to address these issues when we get back to some type of normalcy, and what is working, what is not working, what needs more support, what needs to be strengthened, and how we can get there. So the committee is a long-term commitment to addressing the issue. And the terms are only 2 years, but if people feel that they can commit for another 2 years, I'm sure we'd be more than welcome to do that, to accept that, because again, these are individuals that are volunteering their time to try to address a serious issue in our city. So we're very appreciative of that.
Okay.
Okay. So thank you, sir. And in case you're wondering, this is our last night of interviews. We'll probably make decisions tonight or in the next couple of days. Reach out to people in a week or so. And then in terms of the first meeting, it's probably not going to be until maybe the second week of the year, maybe second, third, just as an initial contact for the group to kind of get started. So that's where we're at.
Okay, first or second week in January, you saying?
Yeah, second or third week, definitely not the first week of January.
Okay.
So yeah.
Okay.
Okay, sir. Thank you for your time. Happy holidays, and be safe.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Happy holidays.
All right, thank you. You too.
So we got Brother Barry coming up.
So
Lawson.
we're halfway through. We did 4 and we got 4 to go.
There is in.
Okay. You with us, Barry? Hello?
You there?
We should probably text them or give them a call.
Can you, one of you do that, please? Barry, are you with us? You appear to be with us, but if you're speaking, we can't hear you.
We're calling them right now.
Good.
Okay, Barry, we can hear you now.
Okay.
Okay, I can hear you. So it's Kelly, Barry. Are you with us?
I am.
Okay.
I was waiting.
Right, I apologize. We got backed up and we kind of we're a little behind. So thank you
No
for
worries.
for your patience. So thank you again for your interest. Also, this is important work, and thank you for stepping up yet again. So what we need you to do is just introduce yourself, tell us why you want to be a part of the committee or the task force, and then members will ask a few questions. So I'll
Sure.
turn it over to you.
Okay, great. Hi, everyone. It's been a long day. Good evening. My name is Barry Walston, and I am a resident of Albany twice. So I'm from North Carolina, but moved up here in the second grade or first grade, and went to school 24 before it became Toast. So I'm dating myself. And I was here when Mayor Corning was mayor. So I I've been here a long time. I hope I don't look like I've been here a long time. However, I've been here. I lived on Morton Avenue and 37 Morton Avenue before it became, I think, 2 Lincoln Square and the other Lincoln Square. But I've been here quite a while. Then I moved back to North Carolina. Then I came back here and went to undergrad and grad school. So I've been here like 45 years because I've been living in Pine Hills for 25 years in Ward 11. It used to be Ward 12 with Mike O'Brien, now Ward 11. So I tend to like stability. So I've been in on Buchanan Street for the last 25 years in my home. And I guess I want to just give you kind of breadth of what I've been doing. But when I graduated from college, my first job was working as a child care worker at Parsons Family Center. And I did that for 2 years. And then my second job was, I was just 2 out of 90 probation officers. I was an Albany County probation officer for 5 years. And I did that working solely for the 5 years in juvenile, in the juvenile unit. And that was quite an enriching experience. But I guess I highlight that back in 1984, there were only 2 Blacks who were probation officers, and we disproportionately represented the caseload. And that was 20 some odd years ago. And then from there, I worked as a recruiter for the National Guard, recruiting students 16 to 18 to go to a challenge program at Camp Smith. And so I recruited across the state, but again, saw how disadvantaged educational systems were for those who may not be always equipped to go through the educational process. However, this experience at Camp Smith really allowed them to provided some exposure and to meet other people who look like them, who had careers. From there, I worked at Whitney M. Young Health Center and worked actually first in Cheers with HIV and AIDS, and then did that for 2 years. And then I worked as the assistant director of the Whitney M. Young Methadone Treatment Program. And then I became the director of the Methadone Treatment Program. From there, I'm where I am today, which is at the New York State Department of Health, where I've been 23 years at the Department of Health and I've had various positions at the Department of Health. But right now, as you see the bags under my eyes, we're responsible for the mobile testing sites. And I'm a manager at the Department of Health. And actually, I've been deployed at Green Island, at all the testing sites. And right now I'm deployed at the Albany SUNY testing site as one of the leads. That's me. And I'm on several boards. I'm on several boards. I'm the president of Black Child Development Institute, which I'm very passionate about, early childhood literacy, but I'm also passionate about working with disenfranchised communities, understanding really where marginalized communities sit throughout the continuum and all the systems that we have before us. And of course, criminal justice is one of those systems. And how do we continue to bring equity and have a voice and understand the lens of the community as well as those populations that may be impacted or affected by decisions made by this system. So that's it. I'm a social worker by profession, so I talk a lot, so I want to stop talking.
Okay, Mr. Hoey, you ready?
Yeah, good evening, Mr. Wilson. Thank you for coming and thank you for the work. I'm very impressed by your resume and the work that you've done. And I feel education is one of the key ways to lift up society. I mean, and we got to make sure we have a free and decent education system. So all the applicants, I try to describe this committee, it's like flying a plane and putting it together at the same time. You know, this is something, it's relatively new. The task force is just something that, you know, we're developing. As we go along, we don't know the number of members on the committee yet, but we do have a goal. And the goal is to try to come up with a solution to bring down the violence, especially in the summer when it hits a peak. So that's the goal we're going to be aiming for, you know, in the upcoming winter and spring season. This committee, we don't know how many times it'll meet and whether it'll have subcommittees, but you know, do you have the time and the commitment, you know, to be appointed to this and to follow through? It's a 2-year commitment that we're asking folks, you know, to get appointed.
Well, yes, as an indication is my commitment to things that I'm involved in. I ran for the school board 4 times, so I mean that's crazy. But anyway, there is a commitment. If I'm engaged in any type of process, I'm especially interested in understanding, as I stated before, understanding the lens of communities and populations, and so. That's important for me if people haven't had that lived experience. And so I guess I would be committed to making a 2-year commitment because I've done that with other organizations. And I'm committed to it.
Thank you so much, Barry.
Joe?
The questions I was going to ask, they already answered, I think for a lot of us. his talents, why he wants to do it. It tells me when he was willing to run for the school board 3 times that there is some commitment to the kids in this city. So thank you. That's all.
Thank you.
Good to see you, my friend.
Yes.
Hope you're doing well. I'm hoping you're staying safe. Thank you for all the work that you've done for our city and all the work you continue to do for our city and for your willingness to volunteer on this committee. A question that I'm asking all the candidates, I want to be consistent. We're looking to put a committee of diverse individuals from different backgrounds, different experiences, different perspective, different work experiences, to have a broad view of what initiatives can be taken and how we can move the needle on this issue. How are you at working with individuals that you normally wouldn't interact with or normally don't agree with to try to build a coalition to move an initiative forward?
Well, as a social worker, we have to love and get along with everyone, right? No, I'm just kidding. I'm being flippant. However, seriously, you know, I think my perspective around when people ask around collaboration is understanding that different doesn't mean deficient. And so if you have a different thought, it doesn't mean that you're deficient about that thought. But first you have to get to that understanding. So you may hear, and part of that is kind of like reframing and translating conversations, right? So people don't want to buy in unless they fully understand what it looks like and what it feels like. And so part of our social work skills is really trying to understand the narrative, make sure that it's not always going to be a 50-50, and I'm real clear with that. You're not always going to appreciate or value the beautiful background that I see John Raphael Ricardo has. However, there is some level of appreciation that you can have, right? And I think it's about, for me, it's about the relationship. Like, what is the relationship with the finance committee? Like, what does it mean? We have to translate that into practical terms, because I don't necessarily do good with like numbers or want to go through that process. If I have to work with them, I'm going to work with them, but I have to understand what the relationship is. And I guess the bottom line is that, yes, I collaborate with people. I want to understand the relationship. I think translation of relationships are important. And that's where you get the buy-in and you feel that there could be a win-win situation. The other reality is that it's not always a win-win. And so part of it is just going through the human experience and understanding where that sits. It's not to stay in it. And I guess what I wanted to, as people were talking, you know, it's how we think about young people not being engaged or creating a better future, as opposed to saying these young people are always being damaging every summer. Because every young person, there is not damaging things happening every summer. And those who may be in that process, it doesn't mean that you look at the damaged goods all the time. You go and find out what's happening that is good. And you try to incrementally savage and continue to build that up. So.
Thank you.
Hello, Barry. Thank you for being here today. My question, which you somewhat answered in some of your responses. So just checking in on, we've obviously seen an increase in violence in 2020 in particular here in the city. What additional changes or improvements would you like to see made to hopefully lead to some resolution to this increase?
Right. So one, I know I don't have all the answers. Two, I don't fully understand everything because these communities continue to develop. Communities continue to evolve with different it's a fluid community. So one of the things that I think is important is understanding the community, right? What are some strategies that we collectively can provide to continue to help build and save our families and young people and communities? And part of that is valuing it. So we do have some great programs that are happening. Is it enough? No, it's not enough. Are there some other areas of concern? So people act out because of behavior, because of either some deficit of some need, right? And so are we trying to address violence without understanding that, look, people need to talk about why they're angry and pissed off. So how many safe spaces do we have? How many times have people called community meetings and say, we just want to have a rap session, right? We offer jobs for the summer, but do we really understand what how that translates to Barry, who may be a single father, has 4 kids, or who may be the only sole provider? Or a young person who's dropped out of school and just collecting money but doesn't understand finances. So I think we have to complement whatever we do. We have to build and complement. It's not to say everything that we've been doing and what we have, throw it out, but it is understanding that we have to, one, if the city is really serious about changing the trajectory of Black and brown communities and disadvantaged or students, young people who don't have opportunities, you have to invest. That's the bottom line. We're all sitting in our seats because someone invested in us educationally, economically, and had mentorship. And there's no difference. I mean, it's not hard to figure out. There has to be an investment and it costs. You can't cut that any other way. And, my challenge is what's been given to me, I am responsible for giving it back in the best way that I can, right? So mentorship, tutelage, reframing stuff for, little Barrys who don't get it, and making sure that they have a resource. They know how to call their council person and say, look, I don't like the way the street looks. I don't feel safe. But part of it is that you all didn't become common council people just waking up doing it. You either were exposed to it or you had someone directing you towards it. And so we have to be a little bit more intentional and deliberate about what it is that we want as an outcome. And I truly want everyone to have a healthier and brighter, productive experience in life, right? So yeah, as a social worker, I can keep talking, so I had to rail it back a notch, right? Councilman Anami is like, oh God, this guy. Anyway.
So thank you, Barry. My question for everyone that's come before us has been about community engagement, and I'm quite familiar with you as are most people on the call, so I won't go there. We'll just pass it along to Councilmember Anani. You're up, Lucy.
Thank you so much, Mr. Barry. I hope everything is going well, and thank you so much for your service to the city and your continued volunteer services and advocacy for the city, particularly our youth in the Black and brown community. My first question is more so the violence in the city of Albany. Do you believe it's a government shortcoming or is it personal responsibility?
I believe it's a combination. I don't think it's either or. And people respond to their communities when they're safe in their communities. people can't be responsible without having the means to try to be better, right? And so when we talk about violence, we're talking about substance use, we're talking about domestic violence, we're talking about lack of education, we're talking about anger man. Like that concept, I guess when we reframe it as violence, violence just doesn't happen because there is a systemic, there's a root cause. And so how does the city has a responsibility to say, look, you know, if there are little Barrys out at night, then I would expect that, and I'm 5 years old, that some community leadership is going to say, look, we need to talk about this and sit down and see what this looks like, or we need to impose something, right? And so what it is that you all do, someone has to make hard choices. Like Barry can't run rampant and create mayhem forever. That's the bottom line. And so is it the city's responsibility? Are they negligent in saying, look, I haven't had a discussion with the Common Council. I need you all to think clearly and strategically, what is it that how do you want to save your community? How do you want to save Ward 11? What does that look like? My council person, Alfredo, you know, I'm concerned in my community about abandoned homes, about homes that are not kept. Like why? So personal responsibility, I'll just use my street. You know, it was a retired street. Now it's a very family centered or family, it's a very family street. There's a lot of families here. Yet, and still, I'm often telling young people, you can't litter. Like you're not part of my, like I didn't have you. But here's a standard. This is what we should value on this street, right? So can I get to them with personal responsibility without showing them? Somebody has to model it. The city has to model it and people have to model it. So I say, yes, it's both.
Thank you. My next question is, what do you believe is the problem or disconnect between law enforcement and communities of color?
I think just history. There's been historical incidents, events that have happened that have tarnished relationships. And so we know this. We just recently had, you know, I just got off a call with another committee where we did actually sat still for 8 minutes and 46 seconds, you know, talk with George Floyd. Like when I even think about that, I get really terribly emotional. So that's a very present experience. So that's not the only experience that police have created and done. There are some very good things that they do. There are some very good things that they become, Kelly, in his trajectory. And so it's in recognizing and acknowledging the fact that these historical events have not been good, and how do we repair it? And so there needs to be reparation, and systems have to be accountable. The images of the police relationships with Black and Brown communities have to be shifted. We talked about representation. Like we know all this, we really know all this in 2020. And so what we want to do is move to action. We want to make sure policies reflect what community policing could stand for. We want to make sure that communities understand their rights as citizens, right? We don't do that. I mean, we don't go around and say, hey, by the way, you know, if you get stopped by the police, the Center for Law and Justice, which I used to work for, we did legal rights, right to know workshops. And so those things haven't been happening as frequently as they need to, but you know, that would build the relationships. And it's a system, it's a huge system that we just need to continue to U-Haul.
Thank you. And my last question is more so, you know, right now we're in the middle of a pandemic and many elected officials are saying, the gun violence is, is the pandemic, is the pandemic, is the pandemic. That's the reason why we haven't violence as a whole. From your field and also from your experience, can you share how the pandemic crisis has exacerbated violence in the Black community?
Well, we've never dealt with what mental wellness, mental health has looked like for Black and Brown communities, right? And so we know with this pandemic, it's created alienation and isolation, right? And people feeling lonely and depressed, and people being in the same room with people who they don't want to be with. I mean, some of our kids are really suffering because there are issues around DV, there are issues around physical and sexual abuse, right? This pandemic just intensified because there were at least a safe haven for a lot of our young people were the schools. There were other people's homes where they could get respite from, right? So now it's really about hypervigilance around mask and washing your hands. I mean, all the protocols that we have to be, that's in place is present now. I guess I would say to you that a struggling community that has always been struggling is still struggling. This pandemic is not a priority. It's not a priority in the sense that we're making it. I guess I would not equate pandemic to violence, gun violence, that those two things are not always parallel. I guess that's what I'm saying. I'm saying a lot of things, but there's a lot to unpack, okay? It's not that simple. It's not as, pandemic, gun violence has been happening, it's gonna happen, it's continuing to happen. It's like, well, even without the pandemic, there was still this low level of, stuff that was happening. How do we address it?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're at the end of our questions. Barry, do you have any questions for us?
You'll probably be thinking it, said, look, I do not want a social worker. But anyway, I'm just kidding. I am a proud member of Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated. So I think, when I think about all the organizations that I'm part of and the social action that we are part of, because we believe in social action, it's important for me to be part of a experience and advisory board that really understands, and I guess I keep using the word, the lens of communities and what that looks like, and the lived experience of certain populations. And so what I do bring is clearly some history of working in criminal justice, but also just understanding human capital and making sure that there are no throwaways. And then the last thing is that, and I just had a conversation, we have to think about things from a strength base. There has to be the lens of strength base first before being problematic. We know that we can hear and see the problems, but it takes much more work to think about, well, what is the kernel of hope and affirmation and resiliency and respect and all that stuff that a community brings or that a group of young people bring. So with that, I really thank you all. I appreciate you. If you haven't been tested, feel free to go to SUNY Albany and get your mobile test, go get tested.
Thank you.
Seriously. Hi, Danielle.
Okay, so
All right.
thank you. Be
Is that my
safe.
calendar, Barry?
Happy holidays.
All right. Thank you. You too.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Have a good holiday, baby.
Thank you. You too. Bye-bye.
You ready for the next one?
Yes. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Just keep them. Hello, Miss Welsh, Kelly Kimbrough, Chair of Public Safety. Welcome. Thank you for your interest. I apologize for we're backed up time-wise, so I appreciate you staying with us. So the way we proceed is have you do introduce yourself, tell us why you want to be a part of the task force, and then we'll ask some questions. Thank you.
Okay. Well, good night, everyone. It's been a long night for you as well, so I completely understand. I'm Roxanne Welch, and I guess a general background. I'm 36 years old. I was born in Jamaica. I immigrated to the US when I was 10. I relocated to Albany for a job at the University at Albany, which is where I currently work. I have been here for probably a year and 8 months now. I have a 9-year-old son, and my interest in joining this committee was just from moving here, watching the news, and especially over the time, there were shootings and things going on and violence, but then over the time during the pandemic, the violence just skyrocketed. And when I saw, on the news, I saw it on the news that they were looking for participants to join in this committee. I said to myself, what am I doing, besides existing and just working and being a parent? I want to do something to give back. I want to use my experience, my background, my time to just give and come up with some ideas and just help to see how I can help the community that I relocated to and where I want to be and where I'm raising my son. So that's the background.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good evening, Ms. Welch. Thank you for coming and taking the time to interview with us on the committee. We really appreciate your work and your work at the university, which is vital to our city. I give this spiel to all the applicants. Think about this committee as being a plane that you're flying, but you're putting it together as you're flying it. We don't have set, like the parts really haven't been put together yet. How many people are going to be on the committee? How often they're going to meet? Will there be subcommittees? Who will chair it? This is all kind of up in the air. But the main goal of this committee is to try to do something about the violence, especially in the summertime, because there seems to be an uptick there. With that being said, this winter season and the spring season, I foresee this committee meeting, many times, maybe subcommittees meeting. Can you commit? Do you have the time to commit to be on this important task force that's critical to the city? And it's just let you know it's a 2-year commitment. The committee will stay on. I mean, if you wanted to stay on, you could, but we're asking people to commit to 2 years if you do get appointed to the committee. So, do you have the time to invest?
Thank you, Thomas. 100%. I went into this knowing that it was going to take work and there would be meetings and putting minds together to come up with plans and things like that. It's something that I want to dedicate time to, and I am 100% willing to make that time and figuring out and, trying to do good for this community. And I would say, a part of, building the plane while you're on it is what I think everyone is dealing with during this time of COVID. Even working at the university, dealing with a pandemic is not something that we're used to at all. So we're trying to navigate that, and create policies and navigate it at the same time we're flying and building the plane. So it's definitely something, especially during this time, that I think a lot of people have gotten used to.
Thank you, Roxanne, and we really appreciate you coming. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Igo? You're muted.
I'll pass at this time, okay?
Okay, thank you, sir. Mr. Ballerin? Why don't we have you go, Ms. Frederick, while Mr. Ballerin's.
Hi, Roxanne. Thank you for being here tonight. My question for you is, we've seen an uptick in violence in 2020 in particular. What changes or improvements would you like to see made to hopefully resolve some of the increase in violence that we're seeing?
Well, my current thoughts are of changes that could be made is just giving access to programs or resources to community members. I think you have to tackle it in two ways. How do you reach younger kids before they get to the point of where they're joining gangs, or how do you reach those people? And then how do you reach the people who are on the cusp of that, or the 18-year-olds, or, so there's two age groups that you want to attack. Maybe for younger groups, it's expanding. And I always say, you don't have to recreate the wheel. Like, what are other programs that are happening that you can attach yourself to or lend resources to? I know, just from being here a short number of times, Victory Church does a lot in the community. Can you piggyback on them and, lend resources and help them expand what they're doing? This summer, particularly, Albany, I think Parks Department had a program, like a week summer program, and they had it in Bethlehem, in Del Mar. And I, to myself, I tried to sign up. It was late, like the program was full. And, I have a car, but I also think about equity. How many people are going to make it from downtown Albany all the way to Del Mar when it's an Albany program? And that's where they located that program. So, why wasn't, what are the resources that would have made it closer in the community, in a park in downtown Albany? Or, how could you get more spots or more spaces for these type of programs so it doesn't reach capacity so quickly? So I think definitely things like that could help. Joining committee and putting minds together, you kind of build as you go and take some things apart and put it together, but definitely finding resources in the community and, helping the youth, and whether it's partnering with schools on trade programs so that youth can see that, there's other venues or venue streams of making money. I think, drug dealers, you have a mind for business, use it for good. You have, you're counting money or whatever you're doing. How do you get them into a business program to see how they can channel that into a positive outlet? Or, teach them a trade, learn how to be a barber or a mechanic or things like that. So I do think you have to, get to, who are on the cusp of maybe joining gangs or being bad or doing, the wrong things. And you have to get the younger youth and, and use, get them to channel their energy and use it in a constructive manner.
Thank you. Thank you for taking your time. Thank you for volunteering for this position. We appreciate that. The question I'm asking all candidates is, we're looking to build a diverse committee with individuals from different backgrounds, different perspectives, different work experiences, with the goal of being able to move the needle on this issue. It's an issue that we've been dealing with for some time now. It's not a 2020 issue. It's beyond that. So how good are you working with individuals that you might not normally agree with, might not normally interact with, but you need to work together on a common goal?
I think I'm great at it. Working at the university and all my previous job experience lends to working on teams and being a team player. I think coming into an environment with respect for others and their thoughts, whether it's different from my own, just having that respect for others and their point of view and understanding that and understanding the value in that, I think is something that I personally value, different backgrounds and what people can actually bring to the table. I think it's a positive thing. And I think I work well on teams. I work well collaboratively. I know when it's time to, fight, and I know when it's time to fold and say, this is the greater good. Is it worth me? Sometimes it's not worth you getting what you want. It's not for me. It's for what's best for the community. So sometimes it's folding and saying, what's the greater good here? Do we want to actually make something happen, or do we want to fight about it? So I definitely feel like that's one of my strengths.
Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Walsh. So you mentioned that you work at the university and you do stuff up there. Do you get a chance to do any community engagement or get involved with community outside of the university, and maybe say some of these impacted neighborhoods we're talking about?
So like I said, I'm pretty new to Albany. I've been here a year and 8 months, but I did, you know, especially during the COVID, I would say it was I'd probably say a life-changing moment for me. Everything that's going on, seeing the lives lost, it has impacted me personally. I lost my grandmother during this time, and it just kind of made me reflect on what am I doing? You know, what's my purpose? What am I giving back? You know, just what am I doing? And, you know, driving through Albany, I saw these little Serve You Albany signs, like little, I guess, yard signs. And at that point, I signed up to be a big brother, big sister. And that process is actually going through now. I did all my interviews and that process, and I'm waiting to be matched. And like, all they ask for is, you know, like two hours a month, you know, to impact someone's life. And I'm like, that's a Netflix movie for me. Like, I can give up a Netflix movie to have an impact on a youth. Like, that's something that I can totally do. They're not asking for a lot. So that's definitely something that I'm doing. I definitely want to be on this committee and see any ideas that we can come together to definitely help the youth that are coming up and to make this community safer for myself, my family, for everyone, for Black and Browns, for everyone who's a part of this community. And I'm looking forward to you know, to being here and see what more that I can contribute to as a member of this community.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Welsh.
Kelly?
Do you want to say something, Joe?
Yeah, one quick question. Thank you for applying for this, and I'm very, very happy seeing your excitement about this. When I was looking at your resume, and you have a master's in public health administration, and it reminded me of a man in the city probably 15, 16 years ago. His name was Dr. Leonard Morgenbesser. He had a PhD, and I'm not sure exactly what I thought it was, public health, but how he started up a gun violence task force in the city of Albany. He insisted that it was the gun violence was a public health issue and should be dealt with as part of that also. Would you agree with any of that or have any feelings about that? Or ever given it any thought? Probably never heard of it before you came to Albany, but no.
No, I've never heard of it. But I would say if there's gun violence in the city and different departments can take up the charge, whether it's public health, whether it's, you know, Albany Police Department can take up the charge to try to combat it, I don't think it hurts the program any if different areas or different venues are trying to tackle the same thing. So let's say if he said, oh, this is a public health issue, I agree. People dying, people getting hurt affects the hospitals, affects insurance, it affects costs, it affects livelihood, it affects mental health, it affects, the kids growing up. I definitely think
we won for the city was that since it was more or less declared a public health issue, that was means for getting funding for programs like SNUG and everything like that. It may be something that we have to keep in mind, Kelly.
Yeah,
I
agree. You got, yeah. Okay, so Ms. Welsh, that's the end of our questions. Do you have any questions for us?
No, I think your night has been long enough, but I thank you guys for doing this interview and considering me. And I do want you to know that I'm, very excited and eager to be a part of this community and to donate my time and help in any way that I can. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Be safe. Stay safe. Happy holidays and good night.
Thank you. Happy holidays. Bye.
Bye. So we'll bring Miss Williams in also right away.
There she is.
Yes, Miss Williams, can you hear me? You're muted.
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes, it's Kelly, Chair of the Public Safety Committee. So thank you for being interested in helping out with this and volunteering for this. What we'll do, okay.
I had to work tonight or I would have been home doing this, but I had to work at the last minute, okay?
Hey, just thank you for being here and for being willing to get involved. So we'll just have you introduce yourself and tell us why you want to be a part of the task force, and then we'll ask you questions.
Hi, everybody. My name is Joyce Williams, born and raised in Albany, New York, raised right up here in Arbor Hill. I'm first below Swan. I am a mother of 5. I am a grandmother of 23, a great grandmother of 8, which includes a set of twins, boys and girls. I went to school at Casanova, went to Livingston, Albany High. I'm born and raised in Albany, so my education was here. But then I went to Hudson Valley, got a degree, went to Casanova, got a degree. And my passion, I work in the field of substance abuse. I am a New York State certified substance abuse counselor here in Albany. I've been doing that work for over 20 years. I love it. It's a passion. I love helping people. And I want to be on the committee. I seen it on TV, and I always wanted to do something in the memory of my nephew. My nephew's name was Larry Omar Miller. He was one of the young men that was killed over in Washington Park back in 1997 by 4 young men. Okay, they were looking for somebody to rob, and my nephew and his friend was walking through Washington Park, and they asked him to go back, and they killed him on the bridle path. Now, I was angry at the time, but when I looked at the whole situation, it was like my nephew and these young boys, everybody was young, and I felt like nobody in that situation won. You know, these young boys got sentenced to 20, 25 years to life, and you know, I was like, nobody won in this situation, but that situation didn't harden my heart. I always think about like, what can I do to help, or what can I do to help my community? So a couple of times after that shooting, I got involved with Stop the Violent marches and, you know, marching around the neighborhood a couple of times. And for a little while, the shootings had died out, you know, but I had wanted to put something over in the park in memory of, but the city wouldn't let us at that time because I didn't think they wanted something in Washington Park. Of course, people go there all the time. So my passion has always been to help. I've been a member of the Treatment Works March for the last 25 years, that all the providers in the neighborhood, we get together and it alternates the march from Arbor Hill to the South End, and we march around all the different providers, outpatient programs, inpatient programs, and we talk about don't do drugs, treatment works. And the kind of work I do, you know, I work with all type of people, even violent people, people angry, people, you know, it's a challenging position. And so, you know, I love what I do. So, and I'm right here in Arbor Hill right now. I work at the Homer Perkins Center, who is named after one of the Albany County legislators from Albany, who wanted to see, because there was a lot of African American men going to jail instead of getting treatment. So this program became alternative incarceration to try to help the guys from the neighborhood get treatment and improve the quality of their life. So I just want to be a part of to see where I can help and try to see what's the solution? What can we do to help? You know, everything's not punitive, you know, so that's why I chose, and that's why I signed up, and that's why I sent y'all the letter.
Thank you very much. Tom?
Yeah. Good evening, Ms. Williams. Thank you for coming and spending the time to talk to the committee. And I'm very impressed with your resume and the work that you're doing. And again, another thank you for your daily work. I mean, it's super important. What I've told all the applicants is this committee is going to be like flying a plane and putting it together as you're flying. You know, we've never, you know, this is relatively new. We really haven't done anything like this. We've had other task force, but not like this particular one. We're not sure the size yet, or, you know, when they're going to meet, but, you know, it's going to take place in the winter and in the spring. The goal of this committee, though, we do know that, is to try to quell the violence, and especially in the summertime when there's an uptick. So I imagine that there's going to be a lot of meetings in this coming winter and spring to try to get something in place before the summer comes. So we were asking all the members for a 2-year commitment people might want to stay on after that 2 years, you're welcome, but we'd like to at least to have continuity in the committee. So my question is, do you have the time and, you know, the want to be part of this committee that could be time consuming? Thank you.
I have the time and I would be committed. I mean, this is something that I would love to do and get involved with. So yes, I can make the time and I can make the commitment.
Thank you, Joyce.
Mhm.
You're muted, Joe.
Fine.
Now you're muted
That's
again.
right now.
Sorry.
I'm getting a little unstable here.
You're good, Joe.
When I say I'll pass right now, Kelly.
Okay.
Ms. Williams, thank you for all you do and everything that you continue to do for our city, and for your willingness to be on this committee and to volunteer, try to make our neighborhoods a safer place for everybody. The question I'm asking all the candidates, what we're looking to do is create a committee that's diverse, that brings different individuals from different perspectives, different backgrounds, different point of views, different work skills, to come together to really look at a holistic approach and how we can address this problem. How well are you at working with individuals you don't normally agree with, wouldn't normally interact with, and in some cases might not even like?
Well, I have no problem. I do that every day with people. I work with all different types of people from all different backgrounds. And sometimes I'm not going to say I don't like them. I might not like their ways, but I'm willing to work and help them out. So that's not even an issue. I'm willing to work with anybody. And, I work with a diverse population now, so it wouldn't be a problem.
Thank you.
Good evening, Miss Williams. Thank you very much for being here. And I do want to say, I do really want to thank you for being willing and to take the pain you've experienced and then channel that into giving back to your community. So really appreciate you being here today. My question is, we've seen an uptick in violence in 2020 in particular this year. What changes or improvements would you like to see made to hopefully lead to some resolve?
I'm glad you asked. I wrote a couple down. I don't know if they'll happen, but I did write some things down that I thought about. Back when I grew up, they had the Arbor Hill Community Center. I don't know if some of y'all remember that. They had the Teen Center downtown. They had the Arbor Hill Community Center uptown. They had St. Joe's, which is now the Albany Barn. So what I noticed too is that young people don't have that anymore. So what can we do to give that back to them? Maybe get another building and, because like the Teen Center and the Arbor Hill Community Center, a certain age group went there after school and then they went home and then the teenagers went there for a certain amount of time. So they had a lot of other things to do. The softball field, Arbor Hill softball field, I played ball over there for like 10 years. There was a time when families went there. You didn't hear about a lot of this crime and stuff going on. Maybe if we can rejuvenate that or get it going and get games and families back to doing something, because anytime you wanted to find somebody in the city of Albany, go to Arbor Hill softball field. Mr. Wallace, Mr. Coons, they made that field a family field. Some other things I thought about real quick was like, I know right now because of the pandemic, sometimes employment is hard. Maybe talk to some of the store owners around the area, see if they would be willing to hire a youth here and there, and maybe the city can look at helping them or giving them an incentive or something for hiring a youth. The neighborhood, we used to have the neighborhood police station, and I see some of these polices are set up at certain corners, but what I see too is that a lot of times they're not in there. So if somebody needed some kind of assistance, maybe making them more visual. And the other thing was maybe a monthly community meeting so people can tell you what they need and what's going on. So that, get more in touch with the community. So those were some things that I said, let me write these down just in case they ask me some questions.
Thank you.
I have one question, Joyce. I go back as long as you in the city of Albany, and I noticed that you, on your resume, said that you worked with Judge Tommy Keegan.
Yes, I did.
That was a different time, and he had different ways to do things, to say the least. But what do you think of the judicial system in
What do I think of it now?
right now? Yes, I guess in New York, but specifically in the city of Albany.
Well, I have to say, with the city of Albany, I'm going to be partial to the chemical dependency part because, you know, I see a lot of, you know, more treatment now than locking them up. So, you know, that part I can speak on. I mean, when they tried the 4 guys for my nephew's murder, I mean, I was real happy with the way Klein did it. It was the son. I forgot his name, but I mean. I'm okay with it. I mean, I'm not partial to it. I'm not angry with it. I'm not.
Do you follow the bail system at all now? Do you agree with that? Anything more?
Yeah, I heard some stuff about the bail system, and where I'm at with that is, I mean, I'm the type of person, I'm gonna tell you, my thing is, if you commit a crime, you should pay for what you do. That's where I'm at.
Thank you. That's Keegan rubbing off on you.
That's where I'm at.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Williams. I've been asking folks about community engagement,
Can
but
you
I
speak up a
know.
little bit? Yeah.
Thank you for your interest. For my question, I've been asking applicants about community engagement. I'm familiar with some of your community engagement. I know you brought us the Hank Wallace dedication to the council. You came and spoke to us about that. I know you've been doing the Zumbas over at the basketball court and stuff. So I know you're engaged in the community. So I that was more a statement than a question because I'm familiar with some of the stuff that you're doing. So with that being said, we're at the end of our questions. Do you have any questions for us?
No, just what I don't know if I may be I may not be the typical person you're looking for. I don't know. I am a fighter. I am a pusher. I am I ask questions.
You're just the person we're looking for. You're just the kind of person we're looking for. So don't worry about that. So.
Okay, and I want to be part of the solution and not part of the problem. And I don't think everything is punitive. Because I've been on both sides of the violence. You know, my nephew being killed, and then, and then I had a lot of friends whose kids was killed too. So, if I can help and be part of a solution, then that's what I do.
And okay, yeah. So thank you for that. And you'd be happy to know that for all the folks that we interviewed, and there were some law enforcement folks in there, everyone looked at this from a problem-solving standpoint. No one was looking punitive. No one was looking lock them up. So that's good. That's a very positive thing. So thank you for your interest, and we'll be talking to you soon. Okay. So you have a good night and be safe. Okay.
Thank you. You too. Thank you, everybody.
Have a good night. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays. So we got Mr. Abrams, correct? Thank you. We look like we're connected to audio. Okay, so we got you there. Thank you, Orville, for your interest. And what we'll do is we'll have you just introduce yourself to the group and tell us why you want to be a part of the task force, and then we'll ask some questions. Thank you. Thank you for being patient. This has been a long process, and you happen to unfortunately be at the end of it, but we say the best for last.
Oh boy, thank you. Can you hear me? All right. So I'm Orville Abrahams. I am a long time, I grew up in Albany in the South End, right on Pearl Street in Ezra Prentice Apartments. Albany resident. I don't live in Albany currently, but I grew up there and went to Albany Public Schools, Albany High, SUNY Albany. Albany's in my blood. So when I started working at the Y, I worked at the Albany Y. I've been involved in various social community events in Albany. Well, 2 years ago, I got the African Heritage Parade together in Albany. And I have most of my friends, family, and acquaintances are from the city of Albany. So I feel a deep connection to the city in my bones. It really is there. And the people of Albany are dear to me as I've known them practically all my life. I've been through several mayors. It seems like Albany's only had 3 mayors, but there's been more. 4, I think. And I've had a chance to talk to all 4 of them. So I just feel that connection to the city, and I want to see the city do well. I want to see the city do better than it's doing now, especially for its African Americans and Latinos, the folks that always seem to be at the bottom rung of the economic ladder. Now it turns out that these spates of violence, there's always been violence, but now it seems as the violence has ratcheted up because probably the introduction of firearms years and years ago, but now it just seems a lot more random. And I know Albany can do better, but it's not going to be able to do better until people get involved. And that's the bottom line. So that's where I'm coming from. That's my story. Albany's always going to be in my heart. So here I am.
Thank you, Mr. Abrams, for coming, taking the time, and interviewing with the committee for the task force position. I've told all the applicants this is going to be like flying a plane and putting it together as you're flying. It's a relatively new committee task force. We don't know the size yet. We don't know when it's going to meet or who the chair will be, but we do know what the goal is, and the goal is to have the task force come up with ways to try to curb the violence in the city, especially in the summertime when it seems to ramp up. So with that being said, there's going to probably be a time commitment this winter and going into spring to try to have something put together in time for the summer. So with that being said, again, I can't predict how many hours will be required, but do you have the time to commit to this committee? And we're going to ask people to serve for 2 years. The committee will go on, and you're welcome to reapply, but we don't want to burn people out either. So, do you have the time and to be able to commit right now?
Well, yes, I will say yes, and I'll tell you why. Nothing comes without sacrifice, right? So if you want to do something impactful, you got to give up something, and I'm sure you folks who are serving on the council know that you're giving up something for a cause. You spend a lot of your time involved in the affairs of Albany. You try to help run the government of Albany and make sure that the citizens in your ward are justly represented. But I think everybody here wants to see a better Albany. And if we're talking about violence with our young people and others, it's going to take a sacrifice. So the people that are charged or who volunteer to try and get a hold of this are going to have to be able to say, I'm going to have to give up my time and some other pieces of my life in order to get this done. So nothing worthwhile that I know of has ever come without some sort of sacrifice. So I'm willing to do that and see this through.
Thank you, Orville. I really appreciate it.
Kelly? Someone want to go first or Tanya. Orville,
How
I
you
just looked
doing?
at your resume, and it's really impressive the work that you've done on different task force and different committees and things like this. And one thing really stands out to me is your work with the YMCA. It's something that was dear to my heart in Albany until it closed, and I think a couple other Ys, the Y in the concourse, the Y in School 20, they're all closed down now, right? But
Yes.
to me, that was a big part of the community that I grew up in, okay? And I know a lot of people from that, okay? From all parts of the city. We still talk, we get together sometimes, and it was terrible when that closed because something like that kept people together, okay? You had some issues. I mean, you know everybody from playing hoop, whatever, this, that, you know what I mean? And it was a big loss to the city. And I think we need more. I think we could use another. I'd love to see the old Y open back up again, but I think we need some community centers. That could be one. But I think it's just an important part. I think it's why a lot of the kids are turning to something else. They don't have anything to do, and stay involved with the YMCA. See what you can do for Albany.
Yeah, thank you. I agree with you. It's a shame those YMCA's had to close. But for the long term, yeah, long-term survival of the regional YMCA, I'm not going to get into the inner workings of that, but me being on the inside, a lot of those things, it just, unfortunately, it happened, and it had to happen in order for the Y to survive. But as you said, I agree with you, Mr. Igo. There has to be something, and it's not a building itself. It is the commitment of the people who are in that building, the commitment to the community, commitment to the young people.
That gives them an opportunity to get together, to work together, to pray
Right.
together.
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly.
People up here, people down there, all over the spectrum, and it was a great thing for the city that it's missed.
Yes, absolutely. So,
Thank you
and I'd
for
love to see something like that be resurrected in the city, whether it's a building, if it's a place where people can all get together, that's fine. But it's not, it's the people that run it and their commitment to the people that come in and the people that are surrounding it, that is the most important thing. Because there are community centers in Albany. There are places that people can go, and I'm not saying the folks that run those things aren't doing a good job, but I just want to point out that they're there, and we still have the problems that we're having.
Well, you're a good man. Do what you can. Thank you.
Oliver, hope you and your family are doing well, sir.
You too, Alfredo. Thank you.
And I want to publicly thank you for your military service, and you know, and all that you've done for our city. Those who may not know, Oliver was my former boss when I worked at the YMCA. So I appreciate all the mentorship and all the support that you gave me in my younger days. The question.
You still look the same, man. I gotta tell you.
We're being really kind because I've got the gray hair and the 25 extra pounds that. But I appreciate the kind words. The question I'm asking all candidates is the same. We're looking to build a group of diverse individuals from different backgrounds, different experiences, different occupations, so we can look at the problem from all different angles and try to create a holistic approach to actually try to move the needle to a better situation. So my question is a simple one. How good are you to work with individuals who you don't normally interact with, wouldn't agree with, and may not even like to some extent? But you have to come together on a common goal to try to get things to be in a better place.
Well, you sound like you're describing the Common Council, man. But I'll tell you what. Again, that's life. That's everyday life. Some of us choose to surround ourselves with people who are completely like us, and we never get a different opinion. We never get a different viewpoint. We get no resistance, and that's fine. That's a choice. But I have had no problems coming to consensus with people who, if we have a common goal, we may want to get to it in different ways. So there's always a way that I've found to be able to work with people like that. Now, as you're putting this group or any group together, what I would say is, the people who are on the group have to be able to say, at the end of the day, this is what we want. We want to see either a reduction in violence, we want to see more community programs, et cetera, et cetera. If you can't agree on that from the start, then there's no sense in having any kind of effort. Our methods are going to be different. I have worked with various groups doing various things, and I've always found a way to find a place for myself to contribute to the effort, whether I was leading or whether I was just a soldier in the effort. Didn't always agree with everything everybody said. I'm not the type of person that's going to be on the side or the meeting after the meeting talking about what we should have done. My military background has taught me that once the orders go out and your squad gets their assignment, that's it. There's no turning back. You just go with it. There's no dissent. Now, people have to make sense too, and that's another thing. It's like if you can't argue with certain people who just have a belief in their head and they just can't get off of that. That's a problem. That is a problem. And we're seeing that in sort of the political world in a greater sense. There are some people that are just they're just not willing to believe anything else, and I don't know how to get to those people. I'll admit that. So I will tell you that I'm willing to work with different people who have different methods, and some have different ideas. But if they profess to be wanting to get to the same place, I think we can work together.
Thank you.
Hi, Orville. Thank you for
Hello.
being here this evening. I was very excited to see your name on the list of applicants. So my question for all candidates tonight is, we've seen an increase in the city of Albany, particularly this year, in violence in 2020. Given that, what changes would you like to see made or improvements to hopefully bring some resolve to that violence?
Okay. So first of all, let's all admit that 2020 is a unusual year in terms of how all city operations have been conducted. So yeah, the trash is picked up, and the bills still go out for taxes and things like that. Everything else is basically changed. I've heard, and this is a sort of a backdrop to my answer, I've heard that even routine things like meeting with your probation officer, all those things have been shelved or decreased. So there are people that used to have regular visits with their criminal justice folks to help guide them through post-release or on some sort of program that they're on to avoid incarceration. And those, because of COVID, many of those things have been cut back. So what I would say, Councilwoman, is that we need to try and put in as much supports as we can, and as much consistent and regular programming, if you call it, for young people. Councilman Igo mentioned this. There's a place where people get together and have a regular routine of of recreation even, but it was more than that. It's a social place. It was a community gathering spot. Those places exist in the city, but you have to have the good actors in them that are there for the right reasons. So there needs to be more consistent approaches to reaching our young people, whether that's through the criminal justice system, whether that's through recreation, whether that's through other outlets. I would like to look at what's the current status of those items now, and how can we put more of those in effect on a consistent basis to have regular contact, regular dialogue, regular activity on a consistent basis, so that even if it's just, and again, COVID, recreation has sort of been taken away from us. So basketball teams aren't meeting anymore. Those coaches are integral to keeping order, keeping dialogue open, keeping routines on track. All of that has been derailed. So those are the types of things, and I'm saying that I understand COVID is here and it's not going to go away tomorrow, but those are the types of things that we have to look at. Maybe there's more virtual programming going on. Maybe there's more street outreach going on, but it has to be consistent, and it has to have the right actors in there, people that are willing to make that sacrifice. They're sacrificing their time, they're sacrificing time with their families, and they're out there trying to have a presence in these communities. I think faith communities too are struggling. All of that's been disrupted. And I know there are some faith leaders out there that are trying to do more community work. And if you're talking about the Black community, the faith leaders are key. I would love to be able to get them on a consistent basis going out and doing outreach, whether it's through virtual services or whether it's street outreach or whether it's just through their congregations, some form of constant, consistent contact with folks in the community and build that base. So those are some of my initial thoughts.
Thank you very much.
Great thoughts, Orville. Great thoughts.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I don't, I've been asking questions of applicants about community engagement. I mean, you're like the community engagement guy, Orville. So I just want to say thank you. Thank you for your interest in joining. Thank you for continually giving back. I mean, I've had the pleasure of working with you through the years, and we've worked on some stuff, and I've seen how you move. So thank you. Thank you for always showing up.
Well, thank you for giving me this opportunity. I appreciate it. Appreciate it. Like I said, the city is dear to me. The people of the city are dear to me, and especially the young people. I was one of those kids on Pearl Street. I could have took a left turn at some point, but I look back and I knew I had people who were mentors. People who I used to go to the Boys and Girls Club. That was a safe haven for me. That was a place where I would look up to the men and women that ran it and say, hey, this is something good, and I feel safe here, and I can build community here. So those are the things that are still needed.
Okay. So thank you. You have any questions for us?
Yes, I do. So I just want to hear from you guys what you hope to achieve. It doesn't have to be anything specific, but it has to be something achievable.
Yes. Obviously, our most immediate goal is impacting the violence. And again, that's not. I mean, it's easier said than done, and there's more than one way to achieve that. So, is that through programming? Is that through adding jobs? I mean, there's a multitude of ways to get to what we want, but we really want to impact and make our streets safe again. And again, I personally would like to get back to the days of the boys club. It was a different time. We were closer. We couldn't, and Donald Trump aside, we couldn't be further apart as a country, as a community, as humans than we are right now. We really need to start looking out for each other and taking care of each other again. And I think we've lost our way along the way, and that's going to be the key to getting back to where we need to be. But I'd like for some of the other members to chime in and offer some thoughts.
I'd like to move the scale a bit. I mean, I know it's not going to go away overnight. I know it's going to be a process, but I'm hoping that this group of individuals will be able to give us their insight. You know, tell us what's working, what's not, what needs more support. Tell us what maybe is failing, and we need to change our direction. But really, you know, I the goal for me is, you know, move the needle. And if we can keep moving the needle in the right direction, then that's success for me.
I think.
Go ahead.
Oh, thanks, Tom. I think for me, in the group, we really want to bring together a large group, or depending on what size we agree on, with diverse backgrounds, because, you know, we are all here as council members, and we might come at it and think about a certain approach that is just our own viewpoints, or the council's viewpoints, or the constituents that we talk to, but bringing together diverse backgrounds. Like I'm very impressed with the various occupations that have applied to this role, or the backgrounds that have come out, getting that perspective and coming up with creative solutions that maybe we would have had our blinders on for is the ultimate goal.
And as I brought up with you, I'd like to see the violence take some ticks down. And my own personal opinion, and I'm hoping the committee will see it, we have quite a few applicants that come from education, that we need to educate our youth. And I read in today's paper, the school district is short 1,700 Chromebooks. Kids can't go, 1,700 kids can't learn right now in Albany. And I mean, that's, to me, is disgraceful. So, you know, us getting on the soapbox saying, oh, we need this and that is one thing. But I think having the community come together as a unified group, saying this is what we need to do, these are the steps to get from where we are today to where we need to be in the future. So it's an exciting time, but there's a lot of unknown. And, you know, we're really going to depend on the committee to work, and it'll be exciting to see what happens.
So I'd also like to ask, if I may, and I know you guys had a long day. Councilman Huey, you said the ticks go down, and that's important. Is how are you going to know when you've succeeded? What are the benchmarks you're going to use to say we're succeeding or we're not? Is it less murders? Is it less assaults? Less calls from police? Less complaints from neighbors? Something, or is the committee going to come up with those metrics?
My own feeling is the committee will most likely come up with those metrics, and we're going to be looking at ward by ward where the crime is and where the violence is. How do we take care of it? You know, we all get texts now whenever there's a shooting, and my phone goes off quite a lot. You know, these last few months, you know, with texts that, you know, a shooting has occurred. So, I mean, you hate to see young people shooting each other, and it's almost like a video game. But video game you can restart, but a human life, once it's gone, it's gone. And to me, that personally, I would like to see the deaths and the shootings go down. But we have an economic problem, and that's what I'm bringing up about education. That we need to have. You went to U Albany. Every kid in Albany should be able to go to the university, in my mind, and it should be affordable. And there should be a way that we can get our kids educated. But we got to really stress why it's so important to have that education. That this is what you need to succeed: is to be, finish school, finish high school, and then move on to college, whether it's a 2-year or 4-year college. My parents were immigrants, and they had 4 children. We all got our degrees. My brother got his PhD. They always stressed the only way you can move up is through education. So that's the background I come from.
And so I would just add that this whole effort and this task force is grown out of, or was birthed through, our equity agenda. And I'm excited about this one because of all the folks that we have that put in for this, but also looking at the language in our legislation. It calls for programming, a budget line, all of that stuff. The group is going to be deciding on how to build that. They're going to decide what it's going to be, where the issues are, how they want to tackle it, and then the city is charged through this legislation with. And we've got a commitment from the mayor's office. There's no budget line there right now, but we don't know how much we're going to need. I think like $1 million, but that's not happening. But certainly through your conversations or through the group's conversations and discussions, you'll decide how you want to tackle it, what it's going to look like, and then we can build budgets based off of that. So it's. I mean, there are going to be council members that are going to from this committee that'll be part of that committee, but we want to be in the minority. We don't want to be controlling things. We want to be certainly participate, but turn it over to you folks and participate where we can and watch and help it happen. So that's the goal.
Okay. Well, if I'm lucky enough to get on the task force, I'll certainly give it my all.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the interest. Happy holidays. Thank you for sticking it out with us. This was a long process, and we appreciate you for that. So
Thank you, Orville, very much. Have a good holiday.
Good night,
You're
Orville.
welcome. Thank you. Have a good evening.
Okay.
Orville, have a good evening.
Too.
Okay. Right. Okay, so at this point, do we want to go into our executive session conversation to
In motion.
I move that we go into executive session so we can discuss the applicants for the task force.
Okay, Joe, you're the second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
All right.
Okay, welcome back. We're out of our executive session, making our selection for our violence prevention task force. We've gone through and made some selections, and at this point, we are not going to put the names out, but we selected 7 members from our original, I believe, 16 or 17 applicants, and successful applicants will be notified in the coming days of their selection. Okay, sound good to the members? Mr. Igo, you look like you had you're muted.
Mine's that.
You're muted again. I think you keep
There you go.
tapping
Got it. You got it, Joe.
No, I'd like the, thank you for unmuting the mute. I'd like to, those that weren't picked, let them know, if they have interest in the future, we contact them for other boards, because a lot of times we don't get any applicants. So that was all. Thank them for applying or whatever. You usually do that, Michelle, on some of the things, right?
Yes, I do.
Right. Both the successful applicants and the other folks will be notified of their selection or non-selection. But this, I mean, we had a good group, very diverse, very excited. I wish we could just dump everyone into the task force, but we want to be effective and get stuff done, and so we had to, trim it down. So,
Kelly, just the logistics. Where will this task force be meeting? City Hall or virtual right now?
Virtual at this point, but I'd imagine once it's safe, we're going to progress to in-person meetings, which would probably be at City Hall, logically speaking. But again, the idea was to set this up and turn it over to the group, to the task force. So maybe they want to meet out in the community. So again, those are questions that remain to be answered. But the initial meeting will definitely be they'll start virtual and maybe start at City Hall. And I believe one of the applicants yesterday actually mentioned or asked the question that whether or not we try to get out to the different areas of the city to have these discussions, which it makes sense to me to try to actually do that, to get more input from the community that way. So, but I think we're all set here. Thank you everyone. This was a long process, a lot of hard work, a lot of discussion. Thank you. If no one else has anything, motion to adjourn. Yep.
Motion to adjourn.
Yes. This has been long. So second.
We'll go a little more.
Okay, Alfredo second. All in favor? Everyone
Aye.
have a good night. Be safe. Happy holidays.
Have a good night, everybody.
And thank you, staff.
Good night.
This is your again amazing.